Welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream show. My name is Brandon Kane. You know that I do appreciate you watching on this fine Wednesday afternoon as our Seattle Seahawks head on into the bye week on the heels of a little bit of a slip, a little bit of a slide. We might have just T-boned down the highway going 55. But that don't mean we don't got time to correct it. So we're going to get into a little bit of maybe some hope today that we can touch upon, not in the name of blind hope, mind you, but in the name of true, real hope in regards to this Wednesday roundup. But we are where we are as a team. I think they did look a lot better than they've looked in recent losses here this past Sunday. And then reviewing the tape and going back and looking at the All-22 here over the last couple of days, I do feel better in an overall sense about this team coming off at first the Buffalo game and some of those other games where there was just sometimes a little bit of a lack of, let's call it spirit, to be kind. Now, we'll start off the weekly roundup today on the note in regards to this trade deadline that just passed. Of course, we had it the early part of this week. 1 p.m. was that deadline point. Your Seahawks didn't do anything really on the day. But it wasn't too surprising either, was it? They hadn't done enough to really push you into a real committal place as far as sell or buy. I think that probably there would have been, being that you're still close to being able to still take things and turn this around. You are still at the bottom of the division as it stands, so hard to be a buyer when you're looking at that. And then even to be a seller, there's still a chance if things can come around, if guys can come back from injury, if the team can find some of that chemistry, some of that identity that's been missing, that you would maybe hold on for that rather than starting to go into an offload, especially I believe because the offload would have entailed being in more of a fire sale mode. The past couple of trade deadlines, I think that we've seen as a given trend that the NFL is not now in a place of if you're out of it and you know you're out of it, that, well, we'll just let go of this guy, save some salary here. We'll just let go of this guy for nothing. Instead, to me, in my eyes, it more looks like there are teams at times really holding on to make sure that they're getting the kind of prime assets they want back in return at this point. There are some good value deals out there to be had at times, but you're not seeing any real big swings going down. And looking at the Detroit Lions situation with landing Zadarius Smith, who is a fine edge rusher for them, getting a little bit older, but certainly helpful in getting them around and over the hump of this Aiden Hutchinson situation, but you still know that they probably would have liked to have made a bit of a bigger swing. And I just think even those teams that are in poor shape right now are not giving those guys away for anything but the prime prices, which is one of the reasons I was kind of slightly advocating for that last week, because I think that that's been the nature of the trend and where this is going. Why it's important is because if we get into next off-season and we start to look towards this trade deadline, we've got to understand that it's not as much going to be a market opportunity as maybe it had been in the past for guys like John Schneider making those kind of value-based trades for Quandre Diggs or Carlos Dunlap, that you're going to have to now give up a little bit more than the bottom end now to get any kind of returns. Just a general trend that I saw here from this is I felt like there was a lot of teams that are in on this season that weren't able to do as much as I think you would have thought that they would have done. And they just had to Niners, Khalil Davis, they wanted to make way more of a bigger splash. They've got plenty of cap space to get it done. You feel like they're probably sitting on cap picks draft picks that they can go, well, we can let this go to be on in it this year in our ever shrinking Super Bowl window. But even they didn't make any moves other than that. I think that that's kind of telling. Let's look at a couple of stats that I want to present to you guys, and I'm not really looking to push this as much to the quarterback position or anything like that. I just want to show you some things for you guys to kind of turn over a little bit of extra data in your mind. You guys know I always like to give you some nuggets if I can find them. And the pass protection issues in Seattle and the offensive line play and all of that is continued even through this last game where there was a lot more good. The defense looks so much more improved. JSN has his breakout game. We feel a little bit better about some things, but the offensive line issues do persist. There are 113 offensive guards in the NFL. Seattle's that have been rated by PFF have the bare minimum snap count to be in line to be rated. So that's a lot of guards. It's a lot of different teams. That's a lot of starters, backups, all mixed on in there. The Seattle Seahawks have two guards that are ranked 98th and 112th in pressures allowed and 93rd and 113th in penalties committed. So, as I always say with this, it's not merely we're talking middle of the road or merely slightly below league average. We're talking the worst of the worst type of situations. And the thing that this touches upon that people sometimes don't consider in this equation of this offensive line is it becomes not just about the lack of opening holes in the run game or the quick pressure. Because remember with pressures, the thing to keep in mind about which pressures are charted, because there can be a little bit of, well, let me put that on the quarterback. Maybe that's on the quarterback. I've showed the stat from last year. The Geno had a 6% of the sacks were actually on him, which is one of the league low rates for starting quarterbacks in the NFL last year. I'd imagine it'll be much the same way this year. Pressure stat is charted by how quick, it's under 2.5 seconds. So if you as a defender can get to the quarterback and create that pressure in under 2.5 seconds, you get your charted pressure. But it's under 2.5 seconds. So it's a stat that's very much, in my opinion, kind of removed from the quarterback's ability to affect it quite as much. And the penalty part of this is the other part to consider with this. I went up and looked it up. The Seahawks right now have in Bradford the 5th most penalized offensive lineman in the sport. They also have the 49th, the 51st, the 55th, and Stone Forsythe is still in the top 100, even though he hasn't played 2 weeks. By the way, Stone Forsythe still leading the NFL for tackles and total pressures allowed, even though he's been on IR for 2 weeks. It's not merely about being just kind of bad. It's about being utterly a catastrophe in so many ways. If not for Cross's emergence this year, that one lone little bright spot in a very dark sky, this would be much, much worse. Just again, one last stat on this. Geno Smith has faced a league-high 93 total pressures that were charted as A, originally blocked, and B, still became a pressure on the quarterback within 2.5 seconds. That means the Seahawks are identifying who to block, and they instantly can't hold up all game long. Third down statistics, which go in conjunction to this data, in my opinion, that I'm providing you, which is I have a lot of pressures. I have a lot of consistent pressure. I have a lot of penalties coming from that offensive line in addition. I'm going to probably end up behind the sticks quite a bit, aren't I? I'm going to end up in these situations where I'm in third and forever, second and forever, which then becomes very hard as an offense to convert. The Seattle Seahawks need to gain an average of 8.9 yards on third down this season. That would be the third. That would be the longest, sorry, let me read this right. That would be the longest third down distance for a single season since at least 1980 per Elias Stats and ESPN Stats. So since 1980, there is no team that has averaged longer yards on third down in the NFL than our Seahawks this year. What does the data tell you? And that's going to be some of what I'm going to ask you guys today. I'm not going to try to tell you. I'm going to make inferences a bit that this is, what does that data tell you? You know, it informs me of something, and maybe I'm making logical missteps here. Totally open to that. I'm not trying to act in all as the grand poop on this information, but I sort of read it as kind of telling me a story that's been pretty consistent. But it's going to be one of the places I want to talk about today here on the channel. We have some of our back and forth on where you guys might stand on how you take that data and look at that. But if you are in the longest third down in distance on average for an NFL team since the year of our Lord of 1980, 45 years, probably going to have a hard time executing the offense. And if you are executing the offense, it just may be, if you are getting anything done, those parts of the offense that are being productive, that maybe those should be worthy of some note in the fact that they are getting that done. But let's see what you guys stand when we get over to you guys on that. Let's bounce our way over here through the rest of this weekly roundup. This is a show that's committed to just trying to take a little bit of a secondary look back at the prior week. As I said before, we didn't have anything as far as any trades go down at the deadline, no re-signings, no any real major injury news coming out, aside from what we'll get to here in just a second, with a couple of major additions coming back into the fray. But let's get on over into the PFF grades of the week. Alrighty. Let's take a look at these suckers. No surprise here, Jackson Smith-Njigba had the best game of his career by PFF's measure. 92.5 grade, leading the way, and that is with a major drop in this game. I did forget to mention, too, on top of all those stats that I just mentioned to you about the long down and distance, the Seahawks also have, I believe, 3 players in the top 25 in the top 25 pass catchers and drops in the NFL. Seahawks have 3 of the guys on that top 25 list. So just another little bit of a worthy note, if you will, there. Geno Smith, 76.2, despite the 3 interceptions. Shows you he played pretty well around those 2 picks that I'd really consider. The one really wasn't at all his fault. Cross, as I said, continues to emerge and be very solid to right on the edge of stardom at times. Cody White, we're going to be getting to him here in a second, 72.7. Really great day for the kid you called up and you needed some help. You needed a shot in the arm. Had a little bit of an issue here with, I think, Bobo really coming forward this year in year 2. Maybe it's a sophomore slump. As you can see, Bobo's your second lowest rated guy in this game. You gave him 42 snaps, just not generating separation, I would say. And that grade's a little bit representative of that. Also, the blocking for him, let me get the down a little bit so you can see there. You can run blocking is the far right column. You can see a Bobo at 56.7. That's also been one of the things that have oddly come down for him just a little bit this year in addition, strangely enough. Laken Tomlinson, you may not like to hear it, but he has slowly gotten bit by bit better here throughout the course of this season. And compared to the years that he had with the New York Jets now, you look at his year overall here, maybe it speaks to how bad he was with the Jets, but he is actually performing better here than he was with the Jets. Now, not lighting the world on fire is still absolutely a trash can full of sand and pass protection that can't move. It's like we once had wheels on it, but there are no more wheels underneath it. So now you just have to scrape it along the ground and hope it moves that way. Kenneth Walker, 69 grade. There just wasn't a lot of daylight to be had out there for him. On the bottom of the side of this, Mike Jarrell, as bad as Stone Forsythe may have been out there right tackle for us, unfortunately. And look, I still like Jarrell a lot as a long-term guy with his potential upside there. But it's been a heavy rookie regression there for him, really struggling the past couple of weeks there at the right tackle position. Penalties have gone up, pressures have gone up, not getting much done as a run blocker or as a pass blocker. He just looks in over his head right now, and he really shouldn't be, playing this year. He should have just really been sitting the whole entire season. The Seahawks had announced that they were going to give Bradford the job because he had been outperforming Christian Haynes in the games that those two had been playing back and forth, and he finally looked like, okay, well, he's not maybe ready to claim and be a solid starter, but he's at least taking the job now versus Haynes, who was really struggling. And now in this game where you finally give him the full reps and none of the rotation, he's one of your lowest rated players, and the tape was awful on him. There's plays, I don't know how many snaps with Bradford he ends up standing still because he blew a block and just kind of looking back aimlessly as the guy's about to just destroy his quarterback. It's really a bad look. And he's got a lot of athletic and ability and power, but he's one of those guys you want to just, crank up a little bit. And I've seen it from him at times where there is that, boiling pot of anger there that you can see where he'll play to the whistle and he'll be a little nasty with it out there, but not as much of seeing that from him this year. And almost like the missing, just like, where's it? Come on, man. Come on. Barner had a little bit of a tough day. That's going to be probably representative of the fact that didn't block quite as well and also had a couple of drops out there running routes. So a well-earned grade on his part. And Fant, as you can see, even though it wasn't great out there, how substantially more that would help them if they had even just a George Fant out there over the top of a Jarrell or a Stone Forsythe. Going over the defense, Ernest Jones has been a fantastic addition for your Seahawks. Just what the doctor ordered. He said, get that chicken soup for that cold, for that run-stopping cold, that runny run-stopping cold. He'll get it done. He'll be giving you that stopping power. He'll be giving you that ability to tackle in space. And that's what you've gotten from Ernest Jones. He's been as advertised in that way. Hey, even give you a 70 grade in coverage, which is supposed to be one of his heavy limitations. So good to see from him. Boye Mafe had a solid game. They continue to use him really nicely in a new role this year, which I'll eventually feature in video, I'm sure, at some point, the spinner role. It's a role that Clowney used to rock for many different years, where you take him from the outside, you kick him over the guard, and you'd have him standing up, and it causes the opposition a lot of problems. It's just their quickness inside from that range of things with still enough strength to get it done. really can throw off some of the pass protections. And we saw it in the Falcons game on the strip sack on Kirk Cousins. Had another play in this game with it where he was able to almost get just about untouched because the guard just couldn't get back over to him as fast as he wanted to. And Mafi's playing really good football. Witherspoon's bouncing back after a little bit of a tough start here this season. Kobe Bryant has been really, really good since ascending to the starting role over the top of Rayshon Jenkins. I think he is making a case here, potentially as a guy that you might be looking here in potentially the long term here in that position if he can continue to round and form this way. Kind of just solid all across the board from him. Wallace doing good with 10 snaps. Leonard Williams was very active in this game. Again, giving you the benefit as a player that's not just a run stuffer, not just a pass rusher. He gives you a bit of both on that side. On the Tariq Woolen interception, it was Leonard Williams' pressure that allowed for Tariq Woolen to get that pick, allowed for that throw to get rushed by Stafford, allowed for Stafford to be forced into a decision of trying to go to Puka Nacua on a 9 route when he's got Tariq Woolen running step for step with him, and there is no separation. Leonard Williams has done that before this year already, by the way, and these are stat charts that will be, they'll be statted as charts of quarterback hits or hurries. But remember in week 1 in the Denver game, it was Leonard Williams beating his man off the line of scrimmage, creating the pressure on Nix, forcing the throw so that Julian Love could jump up and make the pick at the goal line. So he's done this a couple times already. He's been a really good addition since we got him last year at the trade deadline. It's been about a year now, and you really love the benefit of what he has brought to the table. I still maintain, I think that's a good second-round pick given up because he's really been able to provide some steady upper-level play from that defensive tackle position. Jaron Reed is having an overall solid year. He's probably still having to play too many snaps because of the lack of ability to lean on some of the other guys behind him, but still been very good this year overall. It may be surprising you. He's about as well rated as DeForest Buckner this year. A couple of other guys you put around him, you see him where he's rated on some of the PFF boards as far as what he's done. We don't talk a lot about him, but he's actually been, let's call it quietly solid, I suppose. Julian Love was also solid. Byron Murphy, 6 tackles, 56.9 grade overall, though. Gave as good as he got. He's being aligned a lot in that one tech nose tackle role. I don't really like that a lot, but the team's made the decision they want to roll there. You can really only run with 1 3 tech, and with Williams doing what he's doing, the team just probably feels a little bit better about him there than Murphy, and they want to get them both on the field. So you're drawn to go, okay, well, we'll throw him out there in nose tackle and keep rolling and see if he can find some productivity in there. But some of the snaps you see with him out there, it's rough rolling for a guy who runs about 295, taking on those double teams at the point of attack. It's a lot to ask for of a guy at that size. At the bottom side of it, Jonathan Hankins has completely fallen off, man. Had such a great start to this year, and maybe it's that he's a guy who's played too many snaps. They lowered it down to 25 snaps in this game, but still, really, he's getting pushed off at the point of attack. He's not getting anything done in the run game. Woolen, up and down game. More probably down than up. This is a well-deserved grade on his part. His ability to tackle continues to be troublesome on tape. And you're going to see him in a moment here on one of my segments in another way where it just go, come on, man. Come on. Looking for a little bit more on the Merchants. Had the great interception. Don't want to knock him on that. It was a great play down the field on that. But there's some other moments in this game, too, that strike you on it where you go, okay, there's some more meat on that bone. Derek Hall kind of has gone a little bit quieter here, I think, in recent weeks. I don't know, again, playing too many snaps at 56 from his standpoint or what's going on, but he has also kind of quieted down a little bit. And Josh Jobe did fine. He's filling in when he can. Draymond giving you kind of a Draymond game. I guess he's dealing with the shoulder injury, so that's maybe a bit of a part of that. But says something when the Roy Robertson Harris guys outplaying you on the edge, for what you're putting in the investment for him over there. I like to show you guys the special teams ones, but I don't really know if you can get much from them. Obviously, Cody White's going to get the big special teams grade for the block punt. Drake Thomas doing what you got to do if you're going to be a back-end linebacker on the team, have impact there. Return unit's been really good as far as their coverage throughout this year. I don't think they've had very many blow-ups or huge returns on that side of it. So make of these what you will. I never know what too much to go from on the grades with this or how they kind of determine this with PFF. But I always like to show you guys if you want to pause it and take a screenshot or whatever and look at it later. All right, let's get on into the segments here and let's talk about that Mr. Woolen. He is a fantastically gifted cornerback. He might be the most gifted cornerback in the entire NFL. No doubt about that. No doubt about that. And I have a lot of hope for him as a player still here with Seattle that, he could run that player. There's some things in his game you're looking to go forward on at times. You're looking for that development, some of that acumen to come forward. Some of the stuff upstairs and thinking, and just level of attacking. Sometimes there's a little bit of a lack of sometimes aggression there in his game that feels too much like a receiver converted to a cornerback, quite frankly. And we're going to move on to this segment that I've taken right from ESPN called "Come On Man." Guys, I do this every week. It's a lighthearted segment, but it's also one that's times meant to kind of point out a little bit about something on these players and what's going on. And it is about looking at them with what's going on, usually on a play mentally. And there's a couple places in this game we could pick on. Certainly, Connor Williams having troubles with the snap back-to-back weeks multiple times is worthy of a come on man moment, no doubt about that. The bounce off JSN's hands, sure, but that's going to happen in the heat of the moment. When it comes to play like this at the end of the game, overtime, Stafford off of his back foot floats this ball. And you'll notice on this play, Woolen standing flat-footed, waiting for the ball to get into him. And he's got ample opportunity on this play to drive up on the ball, see where it's coming from. He's watching it the whole way. Decides to jump early, sit back on the ball, wait on it. If you're going to be a pure cover corner with great ball skills who doesn't tackle particularly well, then when you get the opportunity to take the ball away, you got to take the ball away. If you're going to be a guy who's going to be an excellent cover corner with great ability to take the ball away, who wants to be paid over $20 million a year after this season, who doesn't tackle, not particularly well, you need to take the ball away. You need to take the ball away. And so plays like this will bug me a little bit more than they might on another player, because this is the skill you bring to the table. This is for game. Not only the skill you bring to the table, but for game. Okay. Caught him there. We come back a couple plays later. End of the game, play action pass for touchdown. You get beat by 3-4 long strides. You're to the place of pulling on the guy's arm at the end. But the thing I want you to watch on here at this play, and I'll slow it down so you can see it, is watch his eyes on this play right after the snap. This is the troublesome part, is not that you're beat deep. It's that you're in man-on-man coverage first off, and you need to get up the field and protect yourself there. He takes an in-cutting step, but his eyes are in the backfield. His eyes go to the backfield prior to the snap and press coverage when he's in man coverage. Look at all of the Seahawks players you've got down there defending the run. You got plenty of bodies down there to handle. You've loaded up to stop the run. His job there is to handle the one wide receiver there that can run the route on this play. But he's looking at Stafford. He's got his eyes in the backfield. He takes a weird step post-snap laterally rather than getting vertically. And this gets him cooked on the route right from the jump. I'm not sure what you're seeing there to be doing that. I'm not sure what you're thinking about there doing that. What are you thinking there? You already don't help out in the run game, it is really. So what are you going to do there? You weren't planning on helping out in the run game there. It's a totally wild play. It gets you beat over the top. It gets you beat for game. It's the second time you've had a kind of a brain fart moment on just this drive alone. You got to be better. My goodness. Come on, man. Got to get it. It's on your ball lands in your hands if you're Woolen at this point. From my perspective on it, you got to take the ball away. Got to be one of those guys that's 7-8 interceptions a year, because you're going to be a guy that has some negative on the run defense. It can be offset. It's not a death knell for you if you can't run defend. But if you got that other part, that's what you got to bring to the play. That other part's got to come up. And over the last couple of years, there's quite a bit of drops, too many drops on Woolen's tape here for if he's going to be that guy, that archetype of a corner. There's been many corners of this in the past. Deion Sanders didn't want to tackle. He didn't like to tackle. That's okay. That's not I'll get it if that's the way that one's going to be. But then on the other side of it, you got to be kind of locked down. Game like that at the end of the moment, you got to be the guy I can trust in press coverage if I'm McDonald. You're that guy. You're supposed to be that guy. You want to be paid like that guy after this season. Well, then you got to be that guy. And those are two representations at the end of this game that are not that guy. Like him a lot. Very hopeful for this guy. But that's not going to get the job done. It's not going to do it. All right, let's go over here to the next segment. It's always some good play calls in the game that always hit you really nice, that you go, well, that's a little bit of a different play call. I like the feel of that one. And hard to find as many offensively in this one. Grubb was kind of searching for himself, but defensively, McDonald was kind of in his bag in this game. He was finding himself in a couple of different areas, especially in that first half. I believe for the first time against McVay, you had like 4 straight possessions where you got to stop on and without them scoring here since he's arrived there to the Rams. And it was really nice seeing some of the stacked boxes, simulated pressures, some of the maneuvering being done there around the line of scrimmage by McDonald there to force that hand, where it wasn't what we've been doing here traditionally this year, which is just 4-man boxes and then dropping everybody into coverage and not showing a lot of different flavor up front. It was very, very much kind of rudimentary in its look of things. So I'll show you the first part of this play, and I have to kind of cut this up into 2 segments here because of some of the restrictions of being able to show too long of these plays. So, bear with me on that part of it. But the first part of this is going to be a 3rd and 5. So we've got a trips look to the far side of the field, and again, unfortunately, I can't show you the full out all 22 because the all 22 is kind of broken for these plays. They've got some weird issue going on in the NFL.com site with some of the plays not allowing you to go to the all 22. I think I need to get maybe your IP rerouter or something, but we've got a trips look here for the Rams here to the top side of your screen here, far side of your screen. And down with the Seattle right now, we've got 4-man front. See though, the way that you stack these 3 guys over, this is very much a Ravens kind of look from last year, where look at how far you have 3 men to the far side of the line of scrimmage for the Rams. What's the point of doing that? Why do that? Well, you're trying to force one-on-ones for your guys across the board. It's what really ultimately the point of that is. And how you're setting this up as you're showing initially here with Dotson as, and I started it right at the start of the play, you can see Dotson here first showing himself up where if Stafford fast snaps this, the Rams have to kind of play this like Dotson might be a blitzer. So you're just reinforcing left tackle to our right defensive end, then their guard into our defensive tackle, then you get their center into your guard. So you force that hand, and you also threaten the center, where if Dotson comes down on the center, now you've got a 3-2. You've got those 3 defensive linemen, so this does put the line in a bit of a pickle before the snap and having to figure out how they're going to deal with this. You have the, obviously, running back there to help you out, but you don't want any kind of situation here from a Rams pass blocking scenario where you want to end up with that running back having to deal with any of those down defensive linemen. So they're being aware of this, are the Rams. Stafford brings Kupp in motion to get a little bit better identification here on the play. Kupp goes in motion. Dotson moves out of the A-gap hole and transfers with Kupp then over the side. So moving with Kupp. I'm going to show you the reason in a second why. He then gets replaced by Ernest Jones on the play, though. So Ernest replaces him not fully into the A-gap, but you can see he's still there relatively close to threaten the Rams there as a potential blitzer. And we know one of the things Ernest Jones does really well, of course, is blitz. It's one of the things that he's really good at. So let's get to the kind of money section of this play. And I'll play this a couple times here over, let you guys kind of see it. You get the incompletion on 3rd down here. And you get the pressure caused. So a couple things going down. First off, like I said before, what ends up happening with those 3 down linemen over there? You get your one-on-ones. Jaron Reed actually wraps his one-on-one back into the right guard. The reason he's doing that is to give Leonard Williams space. This is a defensive line working together. So Leonard Williams, or let's go with Jaron first. Jaron's got a one-on-one here with the center. So you want to be a selfish player? I'm going to beat that guy. I don't care what Leonard Williams is doing. You want to be an unselfish player on this kind of play, or have even this be kind of a play that might get charted by PFF as a fail for him? He's going to wind this actually back to his left as Reed, and I want you to concentrate on just Jaron Reed on this play. So let's play it a couple times. And watch how, with what Jaron Reed's doing, he's creating the opening there for Leonard Williams, because he's pulling the center to the center's right, forcing that center to go just for a second. It's a little tiny pause. I'm not saying it's a full-on, he pulls the center all the way over, but it's just enough to have to stay engaged with him that there's enough space there for Will Williams to get through on it. So it's a nice little game being run by the Seahawks up front there to get Leonard Williams in. It's a great swim move here by Leonard Williams. Obviously, it's him just whooping his guy's butt too. Stafford's got to get this ball off quick. But the backside of this play is what I like here, and that's where I've got to roll this slow. Because what do you got on the backside? That's called bracket coverage, baby. This is what we call going at the tendencies and attacking the tendencies of the Rams. So you run this play, Dotson, he's going to, just like a bracket defender, like a cover 2 defender as a cornerback underneath, he's just going to run trail on Cup, and then you have Woolen over the top all the way. It's a pure double team, and this is a nice little new mix from McDonald this year. Prior years, we would have kept him one-on-one here with Woolen. Prior years, Dotson would have been sitting in zone in the middle of the field covering nobody. Instead, you wrap him underneath. You know that there's going to be the tendency of Stafford to want to go to Cup. You know he's especially, I'm sure, in history of looking at the tape between these two, when you get Cup moving in motion like that, I bet there's an even higher tendency of him going to him, especially when you got a down a distance of 3rd and 5. But look at that. Drapes right over the top of him all the way. Still almost makes the catch because Cup's insane, and so is Stafford. But I like at least the resolve defensively here to also attack the player you know is likely to get the ball. Don't be scared to bracket with double teams. Take him away on a play. Force Stafford to go somewhere else. And if Stafford forces the ball there, there's not going to be a completion to be had. Or he's going to have to make a miraculous throw to complete it. The pressure knocks down the throw. I guess he didn't almost complete it because the ball does get knocked down here, but I like the whole part of the workings of this play. There's a lot of complicated items going on in this play for something that might look kind of simple on the surface of it. And in prior years, these 3 down linemen here would have been stretched right across the board evenly, thus giving the offensive line an easier chance of getting the double team down on a guy like, let's say, Leonard Williams. This play call I liked. It's that play call that just, I don't know what it was, man.
This one hit different.
Just hit a little bit different. Just a little different for some reason. I just like that one. I did like that one. All right, let's move it on here now. Let's get on to the
biggest hit of the week.
A lot of brutal smacks in this one. So let's go to the ones we've got here. The Kobe Bryant, as I said before, has been playing really, really good football, solid football for your Seattle Seahawks. And what's really stands out to me for a guy that's moved to his 3rd position here and is kind of settling in now as a pro at that position is that for being a cornerback transfer to the safety position, where now there becomes a big push to how much physicality and willingness to tackle and get after it, he's really answered that part as much as anything else for the position. And on this play, you're going to get Devin Witherspoon actually causing the fumble here. But I love how Kobe Bryant runs the alleyway here, as they say with these safeties, comes downhill, sticks the defender, sticks the running back with a purpose. Witherspoon, this is what happens when you get players rallying to the ball. Witherspoon fights off of the block with some tenaciousness, and then you get a player hitting one guy while the other guy's pulling back the other way. That's how you can create turnovers. Turnovers are made. They're not accidentally happened upon. The hard hit, simultaneous with the guy pulling at that arm, you get the fumble. It's not a decleater, but I got the running back's attention quick. And I love watching a former cornerback like this run that alleyway and put his nose in there, making no business decisions on that play. And Kobe's done that a couple of times. He was doing that even on special teams, showing that, hey, I understand what I got to bring to play when I become a safety here. And it's not the same thing as being a cornerback. Great play here by Kobe Bryant. Love seeing it. Love seeing it. All right, let's move it on here now. It's always good to keep an eye on the enemy. And I'll tell you what, this division is getting closer and closer packed together by the week. Nobody's certain. The Cardinals have taken now the lead with a 1-game lead at that, but it's still anybody's game with almost half of a season to go. One thing is for certain, nobody has looked great so far. Everyone's had some moments of flourishes, but nothing has been determined quite yet. Let's take a look at the what's going on, though, here in this NFC West. Let's do the tracking of the NFC West. It's going to be an easy one today. We ain't going to have to look too long on this one as our Seahawks. We're playing, of course, the Rams. And then we've got the Arizona Cardinals taking on Chicago Bears. Cardinals absolutely beat the brakes off the Chicago Bears. And when I watched the Arizona Cardinals throughout this year, and even last year, it stood out to me with Gannon, is that they're getting the buy-in from Gannon. They're getting the sense of, from this team, that we know what we are, we know who we are, we're committed to being that coach. We're going to show you that on the field. They play physical. They play fast. They're not the most talented team, but they're going to play hard every single snap. They don't give you an inch. They don't beat themselves. They will not go away from something just because it's not where the sport might modernly be. You know, we see with certain teams, they get away and they want to just pass happy, that they know they want to run the ball. And if they can run the ball well against you, they will continue to run the ball against you well. And I'll tell you what, this was a game that stood out to me as two different styles, because there in the Cardinals, you have a team not as talented as that Bears team. Maybe it's close, but I don't think they're as talented, who stuck with the running game when they had those holes, went after that with the Bears, attacked, and they didn't go away from it. And they would go to multiple different backs throughout this game to stay with that running game. 34 rushing attempts in this one. And yeah, some of that's it. You had the lead, but you were running like that in the first half too, because the Bears just couldn't stop it. Meanwhile, you have the Bears with Captain Shane Waldron out there. And boy, oh boy, as rough as Grubb is at times, Waldron, I think, is worse. And you have Waldron out there with that Chicago team with a young quarterback. Somehow it feels like trying to validate the selection of Rome Odunze and having all those receivers there they've invested in, throwing on first down, throwing on second down, having no commitment to the running game. And boy, two different styles that stood out. The Bears style was going nowhere fast in this game. The Cardinals style will pummel you, and we better be ready to meet that. You know, we weren't ready to meet that kind of style of play in that Detroit Lions game. And if we're going to win this division, be it the Rams next time we play them, when they get their offensive line healthier, better, badder, the 49ers getting McCaffrey back, and this Cardinal team currently sitting in first place that runs the ball very well. If we don't bring our hard hats and continue to make that a part that can get better on this team, those games are going to be tough to pull off, really, really, to even have a chance. And they unfortunately have their biggest strengths at times are to our greatest weakness a little bit on all three of those teams, which does get me just a little bit worried as we go through the season. Now, they're still with hope. Don't get me wrong there, but just a little bit worried. Of course, the 49ers had the bye week this week, and then the Rams, of course, played us, but that's the tracking of the NFC West. There were no major trade deadline moves other than the Rams, or the Cardinals did add the edge rush from the Broncos. Nice little edge rusher, explosive guy. They needed the help there. They've been waiting on Darius Robinson to come back. Gardeck's out. Ojulari, the guy that they wanted this offseason to be the guy there, he's out for the season. So they're reinforcing there. I thought it was a great trade from them. They didn't give up a lot to get him. He's okay. You know, he's all right. We saw him in the week one, and he had a couple pressures in that game, but there's nothing super special necessarily about what he's bringing to the table. Khalil Davis went to the Niners, just some defensive tackle reinforcements. Not well graded by PFF. Not a particularly really strong player in my opinion, and I think they wanted more. They were making a run at DeForest Buckner. They were making a run back at DJ Jones over there with Denver, and I just don't think that they found those teams willing to sell. So they had to kind of make do with what they had. And they did. The Rams didn't make any moves either, though the Rams are in a really good position, I think, here to potentially kind of add by what they're getting back. You know, Puka's coming back into the frame. We saw with Cooper Kupp's in there. I don't know if he's 100%. He does look like he's maybe a little diminished right now. He's had a lot of lower leg injuries. And then they are going to continue to get that offensive line healthy and better. And that was one of the strengths of the team that they built up this offseason and have been building up. So you do wonder what happens once they get to a full strength of a unit. And not to mention, if this team continues to win, if they continue to rip off a winning streak like this, you might see Aaron Donald come back into this season at some point. Would not surprise me. Would not surprise me in the least. I think it's very possible. I don't want to see it, but they keep winning. This is why we had to put them away early, man. We could have kept them in retirement. All right, next segment I want to get on into is looking at a little bit of someone who might have flown under the radar. Someone who might have been a really good player in the game that we're not talking as much about, who did their part to really help us in this game. If it's a loss, at least keep you in it. If it's, excuse me, if it's, if it's golly, man. Let's just get to our underrated hero of the week. Whew. All right. My guy is going to be, I call him Mr. White. He's Mr. White from Reservoir Dogs. That's what I call him. He was a bad man this past Sunday. A bad man. And I'm talking about Cody White. Cody White was one of your preseason hero wide receivers of recent years, really playing well in the preseason. And if there was more of an opening at the wide receiver spot, maybe I would have had more of a chance to make the actual roster. But really did have a very good preseason and was very impressive in how he played it. But he really stood out in this game for a couple of real key moments as much as anything else. As a Seahawks team coming into this, you were aware of the fact you didn't have a player that could really push the envelope down the field, that could challenge down the field. I think in White, you do get a little bit of a guy who's got a little bit maybe more ability to kind of stretch things than the guys that you had on the roster out on the outside, like Lockett, like a Bobo. So providing a bit of a different skill set than those other guys had, and he was able to take advantage in this game. There's a couple of moments that we get here. First off, going deep down the field here, making this catch. I'm going to blow my nose while you watch this catch a couple times. First off, second and I think 24 here. Geno's just trying to make a F it, White's down there somewhere kind of throw. He's again, surprise, surprise, under pressure. He again has to deal with a crazy snap from Connor Williams. No problem. Geno's got it. But what a throw here. And a great job with White of dealing with the physicality downfield to be able to pull out, get off that physicality. He's not pushing. That's not a PI. He's not initiating that contact. An absolute dime of a throw by Geno Smith, but a good job to keep his feet in bounds there as that second foot. If he gets a little lazy with that second foot, very easy for it to flip out of bounds there. Keeps it in bounds. An absolute insane throw by Geno, knowing it's second and 24, knowing that you've got to get a lot of yards to get this thing back up across that first down marker, and huge in this moment, making this completion, able to pull this play. He was also earlier in this game, also in my opinion, draw this flag down the field. This is legitimate pass interference. Some people get caught up, or especially the Rams fans were getting caught up on the feet, getting wrapped up. But when you saw in slow motion, you could see that the cornerback had his hand on his junk. So he was pulling on his junk here. That's always going to draw a flag, in my opinion. I mean, if that's on the line for you, I don't know, I don't know where your standards are at. If you think a grown man can grab my junk, and that's not going to be a PI, maybe after the ball arrives, okay? Maybe after the ball arrives. But prior to the ball arriving, stay off my junk, all right? I guess everything's in fair play once the ball's on the hand. Well, like a great job on his part here to draw the flag, though. And all joking aside, get you another, what we got here, 30 yards, 35 yards down the field on this play. Kind of underrated on that side of it. My man also gave you a little bit of that yak, that nasty yak. Oh, right upfield. Oh, you can't give me. Look at that. Comes the stop. Past the linebacker, untouched. Second guy barely can get his hands on him. He's so quick after the catch. He was getting that first down. He was getting that first down. You couldn't make a stand up on this after this moment, but a nice little catch and run there by White. He's working on a nice little day there, isn't he? And if you want to be a wide receiver who's going to stay on a roster, you want to have this job, you want to keep this job, you want to make it impossible for that team to put you back on the practice squad. Yeah, catching the ball can help. When the ball's thrown your way, have an impact after you catch the ball can help, and helping you remain there. But you know what else can help? Blocking a punt. Blocking a punt also will help out quite a bit on that side of it. And how about him here sliding through? Kind of just, he's sort of slithering. He's slithering here. Look at him. Running a little stunt game. You watch here. Get your eyes inside there. Watch how he slants. That's a game you're running there, They're not just getting upfield and it's a blown block by the Rams. Now, the running back, I don't know what the Rams running back was doing on the play. I'm not too sure if you watch the running back coming up the block what he's thinking, Rivers here. He just gets caught up on, I think he's completely surprised by the twist. So it's a beautiful twist by Harbaugh. We've knocked him a little bit here for some of the special teams play recently, and rightfully so, but this was one of his better ones. Nice little call, nice little just Nice little wrap here with White going around. Great effort on his part. You got to go a million miles an hour on this kind of play. There's no wasted motion, no wasted time. Those punts get off so fast, especially if you're going to run a twist where you're first going laterally post snap. But this is perfectly run. Also, shout out to our guy there. Trying to see, is that Bobo? Bobo did a great job of slanting himself and taking that running back out. He forced that running back to step up, clearing that hole. So big shout out to Bobo on the play. Teammates working together. That's what you love to see. What you love to see. But hey, White, you want to make the squad, man? You want to make the team? You want to stay around? Do things like this. Catch the ball, draw PA, draw flags, get yourself yak. It's a good way to get it done. Good way to get it done. And that kid was very impressive this past week in how he played. And so he earned it. He earned it. Mr. White, my underrated hero of the week. All right, let's bounce over to you guys here in the chat and see where you guys are at on things. We'll probably not going to go super long today, folks. I know I say that today, though, is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to be bouncing over, and we got a bye week. We're going to take a little bit light this week and not do anything too serious here on the stream. But I want to see where your thoughts are at on this team, where you are as far as this bye week, and if you thought they should have been buyers or sellers at the deadline, where you think this team might be going. Your outlook on maybe what is good or is not good about this team. I think there's a lot for us to kind of turn over and consider here as we are on this bye. So I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. I always like to see where you guys are coming from on this kind of stuff. I do appreciate you watching. If you can for me, do please slam bam that like button, as it does help this channel grow tremendously, and maybe get subbed up if you're not already, as we're on the road to 20,000 here. We're cooking along on that mark, We're looking down 18,000s in our sights, and once we're there, we're within 2,000. So we'd love to get there before February. If we can get there, you can help us get there today by summing on up. I want to thank the sponsor of the show too, Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy right now, you can get a 2-for-1 deal going on with them, where for every $100 you spend, you get $50 back. For every $200 you spend, you get $100 back. All the way up to $2,000. They will give you $1,000 back, 2-to-1 match when you use my code NEST, or click the link in the bottom of the description section below. They've got great ongoing picks, some freebies in there, and some 0.5 yards on this to help you kind of build up a little bit of a parlay there. You've got all sorts of different sports you can kind of pick from. Go from basketball starting up, put some of those players together with some of your football picks, do some of the weekly fantasy leagues that you can get into even now. If your fantasy team's toast, get in there over weekly fantasy. You can go win some money. It's not against the house, it's against other players. So you can still use your big brain to get yourself some bucks. I want to thank Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring the show now for well over a couple of years. They've been sponsoring us here, but just use my code NEST. All right, see what you guys are at. Love to see it. Love to see it. Thank you for watching today. I want to see where my 12 man's minds are at right now. Nicholas informs me our offensive line's a dumpster fire. Dara says, can we draft a right tackle and right guard from the same school that has been playing for a few years together? If we could, Dara, I'd love to see it. We saw the Rams able to take advantage of that a little bit with on the defensive side of the ball with First and Fisk. 3 Hours says, I'm not sure the exact number, but I've seen mid 90% of the pressure is on the O-line this year, and the other 5 to 10% is on Gino. That may be about right. I haven't seen any numbers on that myself, but that might be about right. Phoebe says, Jake surprised me yesterday. Didn't care he was a homer. I wanted takes that made sense, and maybe he's not so incompetent. Hey, big props to Jake. Big props to Jake. I do the weekly roundtable show every week with the fellow content creators there. And Jake, our Rams guy, has been, as many of those guys are on that panel, was very much anti-Geno. And that they were very much, when I went in there about a month and a half ago for the first time, they were very much on my butt about the fact that Geno was basically trash. And I think Jake is showing you a bit of the embodiment, and I've got to give him a ton of props. No shade at all, complete props to say that it's very hard for people to pivot off of takes doing this type of stuff. And I do my best to try to pivot when I see stuff needing to be pivoted. Other times, you just is what it is part of this. But he's, I think, moving in a different direction here with this, is Jake. And that, he came out last night and talking about it and was saying, I've got to change my outlook on this. As I've been watching him closer and closer, I'm getting what Brandon's saying on this and what's happening and what's causing this. And he's an unbiased source on that. And not only is he a non-biased source, he's a guy that was in many ways talking about, before he took this really unbiased close second look at Geno, anti-Geno walking into it. So I think it says something when you have someone like yourself who changes that direction in it and what he's seeing by that. But it is a very hotly contested item right now. There's no doubt about that. Nitro Hawk says, I don't understand why Jesse thinks it's smart to just go and try and get the quarterback when we know that the quarterback never works with a bad O-line. Yeah, it's where, and I'm going to try Nitro to get more into that. Me and Jesse will be syncing up next week when we do the behind enemy lines. And I'm going to just try to, I'm going to try to get that synced up with him where, you know, it's the understanding of where's the debate at. You know, the debate a couple of weeks ago was Geno's trash. You know, that's kind of where all of them collectively started at. And I started at, I think he's a top 10 quarterback, you know, and I maintain where I was at a couple of weeks ago on that. But then, you know, it moves last night as Jake's making his points, you know, for Jesse, it moves to, well, he's not a franchise quarterback. It's like, well, what does that mean? What is the brand? Because franchise quarterback's arbitrary and means different things to every different person. You know, I could poll 10 different people and they would give me 10 different definitions of what a franchise quarterback is. So it's a term that doesn't really mean anything when you put it through that. I always say you got to come down, is it a guy that can help me win a Super Bowl if I put the right supporting cast around him? And I'm not talking game manager, but somewhere between he walks on water and game manager, there is a quarterback who can get you to a Super Bowl and win one. And that's been my whole point of this with it. And it's not to say that means we have to go with Geno long term. Let's not push the conversation forward or twist it in different ways. It's just to say the capabilities are there. And that's been the debatable point on this, that those folks that are on Jesse's side of it don't want to give that inch. And it's harder not to give that inch when you're seeing how he is playing. And just a reminder, folks, we do have a lot of folks in the chat. As always, if there is any questions you have for me, comments, if you can, just make sure you put Hawks Nest B, Brando, hey, a-hole. You know, anything along those lines will work. I'll answer to all of them. Nate says the defense is promise and not some down. Jordan says, I still don't get why the Rams wouldn't trade Cup. I think if the Rams had lost to us or they'd lost to the Vikings, that there would have been a really good chance that they would have moved Cup. I think that the draft capital returns is why we didn't see many of the major trades out there, is I just don't think that what was being asked for versus what you'd want as a return wasn't there to be had. I think the Rams want a second rounder if they're moving Cup. I don't think there was a team out there who was willing to offer a second rounder for Cup. So then you end up just coming back around, you sort of go around the track and you land back at the starting place and you go, so, well, why don't we just keep him? And I think you could even come back to looking at last year's trade of Leonard Williams in this consideration, where the Giants have Leonard Williams until the end of the season where he'll be a free agent. They're not going to franchise him. But yet they're able to hold us a line enough on that for a second round pick. I'm guessing because there was so much, heat after him. But that's where those costs, typically do go high if you're going to make that pull. And those teams have to be willing to give up that significant draft capital to do it. And I think it's telling that supposedly here in a year where the draft is supposed to be weak, that there still wasn't teams that were willing to give up that draft capital. It makes me kind of think maybe the draft isn't quite as weak as the narrative is being pushed that it is. Ryan Ball, what's up, man? How you doing, brother? Yoda Soda, thoughts on the election? Yoda Soda, I try to stay away from I try to stay away from all political talk myself. I'll hope for this to be a vestige for you guys to come into that is always a place that doesn't have to be a spot to consider. So I always like it back to the old Johnny Carson thing, where they used to ask Johnny Carson about him telling his political beliefs, and you go, I don't want people to know. If I'm doing my job right, you should have no idea. And I feel very much in the same way myself. I think the injuries did sell him out, David. You're on the right path with this, David. So you have Kupp, very talented, worthy of a second round pick at the deadline. But that injury situation is nothing to shake a stick at. I mean, even in the Viking game a couple weeks ago, after that kind of hip tackle that he suffered, he came up a little bit limpy and gimpy off that one. And so you're a little worried there where you're like, I don't know if he's got any ligaments in those ankles left. Worry a little bit about that, especially for a second round pick. Maybe for a third, you'd roll those dice, but for a second. Nick says Cooper Kupp was an offensive player of the year and Super Bowl MVP, regardless of injuries. You just don't give up on a player like that. I think that they're in sell mode, they would, but if they're in on this year, you don't, Nick, to your point. And that's where it comes down. If they'd lost the last game or two and they thought that they were really out on it in being a Super Bowl contender, that then they are a team that I could see maybe pivoting hard in that way to go, okay, we're turning it over. And if Stafford's due to retire after this year and they're thinking that that's going to be the case, maybe then it's more understandable as to why you would have then moved Kupp at the deadline, because you knew that this thing's going to need to be turned over a little bit, at least from an offensive perspective, with skill position players and quarterback. Jeffrey, a lot of punt blocks across the NFL this year. Coordinators are in their bag, man. They're in their bag. Darius love Grubb, but he likes to always go deep when you need 1 yard for first down. He does like his deep shots, yeah. It's one of the odd spread concept guys I've run into that are of that way. Erickson says, good analysis. Thank you, Erickson. Jeffrey Thistle, if they wanted to remove kicking and punting from the game after this season, I'd have no problem. I mean, I'd miss Michael Dixon, I would. But I'd be okay with it. It is something that just kind of goes oddly against the grain of the rest of the sport. Jeffrey says White's better than Bobo. He just might be. Especially if he can really attack on the outside. I mean, Bobo's getting his chance here with DK out the last couple games, and he's not been able to pick it up on and take advantage. Phoebe says, since you're a Sydney Sweeney fan, B, and Hawks Nest, would you rather have dinner with Metcalf or a dinner with Sweeney? Sweeney. I'm a virile man. DK is awesome. DK is awesome, but I'm going the other way on that one, Phoebe. This is the real question with DK is if JSN can put up those numbers without him, why can't he do it with him? Grubb's got to use JSN better. Yeah, it's got to be a better balance at play. I think some of it's been a bit of too much onus drawn on trying to force things into DK at times from Gino's perspective, rather than just letting things play out on the field all the time. But it's also, I think, to the play calling and who's at the center of this play call, who's the first read. There's play calls you can have to go to the first read now, go to JSN off DK. That stuff you can mandate by the play call from a Grubb perspective too. Cooper's any news on when Jody will be selling the team? Is it still 2026? And will she just but sell it back to herself? There's no real mandate on this for a timeline, Cobri. She has to sell, but there's nothing in it that I've been led to believe or understand that it has to be sold by insert date A. She can grind her feet, and I mean, she could basically claim that she's not getting enough of the price that she needs to get for the modern value and hold it off for that reason itself, I think. Not to mention, I think there's a part of it where, she's making more profit every year that she holds onto the team for when she eventually does sell the team. So my instincts on this are that being we're hearing no rumors, this thing is still very far off. Orchie says, watching JSN is like watching your second string for me. He's just not there yet. And I know he pulled up some big numbers, but not like DK. It just seems like JSN's struggling. Well, this last game was a big jump from where he's been. I'll say that. And, it's this game has been missing. So, to say, well, Jason's arrived, like this is the one game we've had of this kind of game of his impact in a year and a half. The Patriots game was pretty good. It was, but the way he was able to really get up the field like we thought he could from the slot when we drafted him, this was a unique kind of performance. And let's see if he can build and keep going with it. I think we can get them both, like Nick Guzman said. JSN finally proved he's just heralded as the wide receiver one in the class. Now I just want to see the offensive line hold up more so we can see DK and JSN flourish simultaneously. There we go. Better offensive line play, I think, will help get more production out of both those two guys, too. That's a good point, Nick. Luis says, I thought the biggest hit was going to be Kobe Bryant's hit that drew the flag that got called back. That was a good one, too. I was thinking about that one. I comboed this one up just because I like the teamwork on this one as much. But that one would be probably a harder, per se hit. Ryan Ball, I couldn't sleep last night. I thought about the Hawks standing put through the deadline and I actually feel good about it. I think our upside is really good. So I'm glad they didn't get rid of good players. If we address the O-line issues, I still think we have a 13-4 type upside. Obviously not this year, but I think Mike and Ryan just need more time. I like your thought. I like your head where you're at on this, Ryan. I think that I even like, even on the low end potential of maybe this team and where you're looking at right now in this team and saying, okay, well, this year is not our year with it a little bit. And I can understand anybody taking that method of approach and saying, well, you look at it right now, you're 4-5 in the division, 5-4 is leading the division. How can you hope to have that chance in this year? And I would just say anything's possible this year. You're getting back Abraham Lucas and DK Metcalf. And we don't know, a lot of people are going to say they know where Abraham is at. And they say, oh, he's done. He's shot. He ain't going to be the same player. You all can say, those people that are saying that, you can say as loud as you want on that. You don't know any more than we don't know. He maybe looks a shell of himself. He's maybe back up to full speed. It could be at either end of that. We don't know. And if it is at the end that he is able to be at full speed, you're able to take what is on an offensive line, and this is saying something. You're taking on an offensive line and you're taking out the worst part of your offensive line and now putting in a strength. That's going to improve the overall offensive line. It's going to make that offense better with it. And I'm not saying it's going to be a Lucas Ham. Lucas is going to come in and stitch all these wounds up by himself, but it will help. That defense can build on that performance from last week and continue to do more of that. Anything's possible. You just got to win the division. But I'm with you. I think standing pat at the deadline was smart. I don't think anybody was giving out any prime real estate for your players. I like still sitting on the potential of the season and assessing the fullness of the season of what's going on, and make the moves at the end of the year. If there's going to be some extreme moves or heavy turnover at that point, do it after the season. Nothing really to be gained by doing that now either. Nick says, I think if Paul Allen was in control, Johnston might not have his job and the team would look really different. Probably. It's very possible. Don't know much about what's going on in the background, so it's always hard to determine a bit of that part. Nick says we needed another boundary cornerback and offensive line above all else. Problem is, last draft was a gold mine for offensive line, and we just completely whiffed. This next one does have the talent nor the depth. We'll see. We'll see. It's possible it plays out that way. I'm going to be interested, and I haven't gone deep into my scouting process on these guys as of yet, but it'll be interesting to see if it is in that kind of bad of a shape. I am allergic to bad football, Jeffrey. That's exactly right. I know what you're saying, more Chief, on JSN too. I get it. It's not that he's not good. It's just, it's a game. Let's want to see him continue to build on it. Do 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 do. That's all. Hazard, Geno's one of the top quarterbacks getting the ball out of his hands as fast as anybody in the league this year. I believe he's in the top 10, top 5 rate of things. So it's there may be some plays you can find where he's holding the ball here and there, but that's why you take that stat by and large, because it does tell you about overall where he's at on the holding of the ball. And I've tried to present also in recent years on this SL Hazard like last year. You'll see some of the same stats from it this year as well. That, I mean, I'd go up SL Hazard and just look at the stats I presented a little bit at the start of the show on this. That again, I think do show collectively things that should be jumping out to those folks about this offensive line and the pressure rate, and that you can't put it back on Geno. This right here, for instance, is one that's very hard for any camp that wants to put that the pressure's on Geno. This one right here is one where there's no real way to dance off of this one. There's no way to say, but. The Seahawks are leading the NFL in 93 total pressures. Pressures are a stat that's tracked by when a defender gets to a quarterback in under 2.5 seconds. So there's no quarterbacks in the NFL that are averaging 2.5 seconds getting the ball out of their hands on average. 2.6, 2.65. That's going to be probably about the fastest in the league. 3.05. That's going to be about the slowest in the league. Geno's probably putting it about 2.7 right now on the faster side, 2.65. But Avatar, yeah, Cup is injury prone, not worth a second. Yeah, I get that too. I also get the Rams asking for a second though as well. And Grenade says, can JS now be unburdened by what has been on the O-line? I hope he can. I hope he can. Nick says DK would tell you to have dinner with Sweeney. I know, he would be too. He's like, dude, bro, get over there. You know what you need to be doing. Jeffrey, I think Bezos is I think he's circling the Hawks big time. And the second Jody sells, I think he's going to come in there, and I could see him coming being like, I'll throw you $1 billion more than the next person's going to offer you. And then what do you say if you're Jody? Nick says, I wonder if the Nike guy would want to buy an NFL team. He's given Oregon an unlimited NIL budget. I hadn't heard of him ever being interested in that. Grace says, I hate this talk being forced. I hate this ball being forced to DK talk when JSN only has 6 less targets before DK missed the last 2 games. I don't think that they've been, I think it's that line between there needed to be an uptake, to your point, Greg, this year of making more of a purposeful decision of saying we're going to get DK more acclimated in this offense more often than we have in the past. And in doing that, you've got to get your share of targets to him. I mean, let's face it, in 5 of DK's first 6 seasons in the NFL, he's been the second most targeted player on the roster. But it's also a good point that it's not like JSN hasn't gotten some of his targets into that. It just feels like sometimes, I think to some people, if I may speak for some people on this and their perspective on it, that there isn't that mix that you get that you'd like to have between the two, where you're keeping sometimes those defenses off balanced in how you're spreading the ball out over the course of the game, and the way he did at Washington kind of, would be like, here's the one to pay Jalen Polk, then back over to Roma Dunzier, then let's go to Jalen McMillan, and then back over here to Jalen Polk, and just that mixing it up that you'd kind of feel from UW that sometimes with this offense, and there's some good reasons probably for it that go beyond Grubb not just merely mixing it up, some of the difficulties around the ball, pass protection, whatnot there, but yeah, he's gotten some share of targets in there too. Jefferson, as long as it's not an ownership like the M's, that'd be a nightmare. That would be a nightmare. Haley says, B, it's not so much about forcing the DK, purely use of JSN cleared separation stat is no joke. Yeah. It's about forcing it, purely use of JSN. Yeah, it's more just the balance and the timing of how you work their touches, keeping those defenses off guard. If you have a defense starting to lean to DK because they're feeling like you're force feeding a little bit, you've got that counterbalance over there to JSN ready to go. And there hasn't always been that distinction as clearly this year for me at times. It's not been horrible or anything, just you could do it a little bit better. Phoebe says, B, a lot of the routes JSN ran when he was successful, he was moving down the field. We should use him more down the field and use Laviska as the yak guy like you're supposed to do. I'd like to do that too, man. Getting Laviska more acclimated in this offense would be nice because he brings a skill set that we don't have otherwise in the offense, which I know that Grubb could use in this spread system. Randall McDaniel, thank you for the $20 donation. Appreciate you for that, Randall. What's up, buddy? I feel relatively optimistic on the rest of the year, especially on the D. Really not sold on Grubb. Was concerned at hiring with his ability and willingness to run the ball. I think JS should have hired a vet OC to complement Mac. Well, they're the guy they had in their sights set on, the first opening guy they were looking at was Arthur Smith. And Arthur Smith comes in, and I think he does a much better job of staying with the running game and of making that the centerpiece point and keeping the balance a little bit more well struck. Also that veteran guy that you would have looked for there, Randall. And when they pivoted maybe to their second guy in Grubb, there should have been the guy, to your point, that was also a vet that they went to as the second guy, especially having a rookie head coach in Grubb who was going to have a tough enough of his own footing on getting his defense installed over there on that other side of the ball. Grubb has shown sort of those, he's like the prospect that shows you the flashes, but has a lot of rawness within his fundamentals. And you get that a little bit from him as a play caller. I think that it's totally fair, Randall, saying there should be way more opening to him running the ball and being more consistent with that, because there's just games where he's just wholly kind of bailed on it at times. I think he's also working in a situation in the system that's not setting him up necessarily for a lot of success with how bad that offensive line has been. And where you go, I'll see people that'll hammer him on running the ball when we're not running the ball well. And it's hard to stay with it if you can't run it. You got first half, 14 carries and 16 yards. Keep running it. It's like, well, we're not getting anything in it. And so you give him there. But I mean, your point is solid here. You don't have a lot of offensive coordinators coming from college to the pros making that transition. I think he's the first one, in fact. And probably for this reason, is that the growing pains that are involved there from the transition of learning what does and what doesn't work. Not to mention maybe the too much, to your point as well on this, the too much of the heavy onus upon passing rather than leaning into the run more consistently is always a drive. And I do think that is a drive with Grubb. There is a pull to just get back in that passing thing, pass. And that's where it's legitimate to point out some of the lack of going a little bit more to the run game at times, especially not even trying to work any of the diversified run game, working to the edges, fly sweeps, pitch plays. All that stuff has been running a bare minimum. But that's the hard part that comes back in my mind, Randall, where he goes, is it running a bare minimum because he doesn't want to run it, or he wants to pass so much? Or is it because he doesn't think his guys can block it up and he doesn't have the talent? It's again where we come back like the quarterback discussion on this, Randall, for me at times, where there's these positions or players or coaches that you want to make a determination on evaluation, but it gets very hard if you don't give them the talent to let their thing run. This is why I give a lot of times those head coaches in the sport who haven't necessarily had a lot of success some room for error and saying it's not really their fault as far as the failure. Stefanski with Cleveland, is it his fault that he hasn't been able to take off there in Cleveland? Or is, the Deshaun Watson trade, not getting another quarterback in there, and he's an offensive-minded head coach, and he's not really been set up then to find that success because they've been just getting along with real poor quarterback play. But maybe it's a place they move this offseason, Randall, and to your point on this is a final point that, you can always pivot off an offensive coordinator quickly, and if McDonald determines after this offseason that this isn't running for him, it's not going to work, then you go and get the vet guy as a way to course correct and change if that's where he wants to go with it. But I do feel optimistic still about the rest of the year, Randall. DK and Abraham Lucas, especially a healthy Abraham Lucas coming back, is no small two additions. That's no little just, it's a little it's like getting a back end guy on the roster. Those are two potential impact positions to your offense. That's a shot in the arm. Say nothing of then maybe 2 to 3 weeks later, maybe you're getting a Uchenna Nwosu back. And so the schedule's going to be pretty tough. You're going to have to handle business in this division real fast. But you're 2 games out of being back up in first place. This isn't like you got 5, 6, 7 games, and there's half a season left. So still plenty of time. Just got to continue to get this defense stepping forward and got to find a way to stop taking on water with this offensive line. Thank you, Randall, for the $20 donation. Randall also with a $5. Says, I think the Rams did McVay a solid by hiring Phillips to take care of the D. Hard to have a first-year head coach with a defensive background paired with a first-year offensive coordinator. Lots of firsts. Yeah, that was very helpful for the Rams to do that with Phillips. And I thought to a lesser degree we were getting that with Leslie Frazier and how he could help things out here, though Leslie's a defensive-minded guy, so it was more help for Mike to the defensive side, to your point, and there wasn't as much of the established offensive mind within that. I think, there was probably choices that Mike could have gone with that would have been safe choices that Mike probably felt in retrospect, Randall, that had very high floors, but whose ceilings as coaches and whose potential as coaches were limited. And I think that what he went with the Grubb hiring is he went for, yes, an untested guy, but he also went for the upside of what that coach could bring and how explosive he could make the offense because he wasn't limited and he was open to attacking in a variety of different ways. And in many ways, he sees, I think, McDonald in that kind of offense, the type of offense that can counter his defense. And so I think it was a move about swinging hard and trying to put it up in the second deck, and we'll see if it is a miss when it's all said and done. I think that there's a part of me that'd be pulled here, Randall, to saying, I don't know if I'd be twisted as much to necessarily wanting to run to move off of Grubb here as much as I would like to be able to get back to giving him a legitimate offensive line to then make the proper determination about him as an offensive coordinator. And I think that it's just, as I start out with the show today, it's just in such bad shape. It makes assessing and criticizing and critiquing other things of this team that are related to it very hard for me. Just me in particular. It may not be for others. I'm not asking it to be that way for everybody else, but to my eyes on this one, it's making it very difficult. The waters are very muddied because of how bad this offensive line is, Randall, on that for me. But you bring up great points, man. And I thank you for all of your support to the channel, brother. You're awesome. Brian says it's our dumb luck that nobody's running away with the division, but Arizona and Los Angeles are finding their mojo, and we better be prepared to keep pace. Amen. Amen. Nick says our run blocking is even worse than the pass blocking and really showed last game. Grubb knows he can't run the ball 30 times if we average 2.5 yards per carry. There we go, Nick. 100%, man. It's atrocious all the way around. It's non-functional. It's very close to a non-functional state offensive line. That's that. Charles Cross is about the only thing making this functional. And Connor Williams, when he's not snapping it over the head of Geno Smith, is kind of functional. But everything else is completely dysfunctional. Yeah, Haley, Bradford's regressing hard this season. It's wild to watch for a guy that the more he plays, it's almost the worse he's getting. Which kind of runs counterintuitive, and I don't get it. Ryan says we have the 20th ranked rushing offense is horrible. It is horrible. Yeah, Nicholas, we aren't using Chanel like we should. Greg says JSN's going to end up leading the team in targets if he doesn't get hurt, and that'll be 5 out of 6 years DK's been on the Hawks, but was second in targets. DK's never been forced the ball or maxed out by the OC. Great points. Agreed 100%, Greg. Nick, I almost want Geno to get the flu before a game just so the fan base can see how bad things would look with Hal. Not even dissing Hal, but it's not an easy environment to thrive in. No, it's not. No, it's not. And if we do, part of the reason for me in looking at the quarterback position and saying it's so important for us to assess this and so important for us to make sure we're aware of where it's at is to make sure we're aware of where the other parts of this team are at, so that if you become as an organization, I don't think John would ever do this, but I'm certainly think that this could be something that those in the fan base could fall prey to, saying, well, just go get the quarterback this offseason, just stick a load of assets into that and everything will be fixed. We'll be fine at that point. And like, no, the problems here go much further beyond the QB position. Hey, this is if Bezos buys the Hawks, I'm probably out, not going to lie. I'm just saying, if I was a betting man, I'd put it all on the Bays. SL, all I ask for is just one big game. I don't even know if we can win a single divisional game this year. CMC is coming back, and I think we might be in for another spanking off the bye week. It's very possible, SL. Very possible. 3 teams in the division have the way to go after, especially from us just look at them defensively. I mean, what we have defensively, we struggle typically to stop the run. They did good this last week, but that's where it's at. All 3 of these teams in this division run the ball like hell. Like hail. Haley says Bezos can't buy the Hawks anyway until after the Thursday night deal's over. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Nicholas, I think DK still gets to 1,000 yards too. I do. David, if Bezos buys the teams, he needs to sign the checks and keep quiet, or else we'll have Seattle Jerry Jones. I don't think he'll be that guy here. I don't think he's a guy that'll come in and act like that. We've seen few of these kind of guys come in and be in that manner. It's more of the outlier. You get a Dan Snyder, a Jerry Jones, or the guy down there in Carolina. They do exist, and you don't want to run into them, but I don't know how, as a guy buying a team at this point, you look at the situation and say, yeah, this has got a good, recent, solid track record of owners coming to their general managers and telling them what time it is. Not JT, any positive takeaways from the season so far? Yeah, absolutely. I think Mike McDonald is getting his scheme into place slow but surely, and that you're seeing, even if it's in just some of the flashes rather than we're just consistently seeing it play on the field, it is there, and you saw it this last week, the effect it had even on a veteran like Stafford, and how it can confuse him and give him problems and give him fits, and how you can put your guys in positions to succeed. And I think with McDonald, before anything else, that was the one thing we wanted to see with him, bringing into the door from the jump. I think Byron Murphy has been a good bright flash for you. He's not necessarily got the sack numbers yet, but 6 tackles this last week, and he's been solid, and that's with you playing him as a one tech. Leonard Williams has continued to play really well. I think overall, Derek Hall and Boye Mafe, while they may not be guys that trend out to being superstars in the sport, do trend to being guys that can get you somewhere between 10 to 13 sacks a season and play a really solid run defense in between that. So I think that's where Kobe Bryant stepped in really well at the safety position. Charles Cross is turned into a fully fledged franchise left tackle. AJ Barner is showing you some solid flashes to make you believe long term you've got a starting tight end there. Michael Dixon, still awesome. Nick says Harold Fannin would be an awesome tight end prospect to bring in. We'd have to spend most likely a second round pick on him, which is steep for a tight end. However, he immediately fills the role as the yak guy. Maybe a possibility. I am expecting at this point, Nick, that the team probably moves on from Noah Fant at this point with what he is being paid. So probably you're going to be in the market to draft one. That's right, SL. Find ways to win ugly if you got to. Whatever it takes now going the rest of the season. We don't have any room for error. So Elias says, hi, Hawks Nest. Hope life is treating you well. Go Hawks. Life is. I'd like to see my team do better, but I've had a good year here on the channel, and it's been cool chopping up with you guys. And, we'll turn this around eventually. Haley says, if Abe comes back and the offensive line looks much better, people are going to owe JS an apology. Maybe so. Maybe so. I mean, apology, I'd be happy to give out myself. Nick, man, it would be awesome if we drafted a guy like Jaheim Bell to be a yak guy for us instead of a cornerback who isn't on the team anymore. How is Jaheim Bell doing? He was fun. He was a lot of fun. New England tight end. Well, he's got a yard receiving this year. Of course, they got a couple tight ends there, Nick. He's kind of stacked on the depth chart behind Hooper and Hunter Henry. Yeah, David, we still need to address the line if Lucas returns. You're not wrong. I mean, even if Lucas comes back and is impactful for you as a right tackle, in my opinion, the interior of the offensive line still needs to be made a point of emphasis at that point. We can't sit back and go, well, hopefully Haynes develops next year. If Haynes hasn't shown it to you on the field, I don't care if he's got the 3rd round pedigree. That's been the problem with us in the past, is leaning on pedigree and hoping pedigree develops out of a lack of ability. And maybe Haynes has that, maybe he doesn't, but I ain't going to count on it going into the future. So you got to look at it going into this offseason. No center, no right guard, in my opinion, really at that point, if it's going to stay where it's currently at, and certainly no left guard. So it still would deserve to be the point of priority, number 1. And I hope they do. Patrick says there's one thing that we are consistent at, being inconsistent. Hopefully we can clean up the mistakes. Hopefully. That's very true. Yeah, this is not one player. 2.5, Lucas, living up draft boards. Yeah. Keon Lund, thank you for the $2 donation, Keon. He says, thanks for going to bat for Gino in the round table. My pleasure, man. I will continue to do so because this has been for me a little bit of a keynote moment in watching the quarterback position here in recent years and seeing how it's shifted, and there's a narrative, and this is around Gino, just the quarterback position itself in the NFL and how it's viewed. And I see so many examples of how it's skewed in so many minds, and this isn't just fans. It's I tell you, it's not just fans. This is pundits, this is analysts, this is NFL front offices. I really have kind of realized how broken the process truly is towards the quarterback position and how it's viewed. And it's kind of been a recent revelation for me here over the past couple of years, really, but it stands out now more than ever. And Gino's one of the representations of that. I was mentioning last night on the roundtable, CJ Stroud is a representation of that. Where CJ's a guy that starts to have that lack of supporting cast around him, right? No Nico Collins. Oh, like we have no DK Metcalf. Oh, and your offensive line falls apart. And CJ Stroud looks like a mere shell of himself against the Jets last week. He can't operate under that kind of duress nowhere near, not at all. And yet with a guy like Gino who's dealing with those same kind of parameters, he's out there making miracles happen. And that's worthy of being praised. That's worthy of being lauded rather than picked apart. Because every other quarterback in that situation would have what happened to CJ Stroud on the Jets more than likely occur, where you just fall in underneath the wave, the avalanche. Well, I appreciate you, Keon. David Hatcher, I was fully expecting Christian Haynes to be a comfortable day one starter. The fact that he can't beat out AB is unacceptable, honestly. It really is, David, and that's why I don't have a lot of faith for him in the future as far as relying on him. It's more of a bonus now more than anything else because he was a 2-year starter coming out of Connecticut. He was supposed to be as pro-ready of any guard in this draft. And in a guy like Dominic Pooney, for instance, who's playing so well for the Niners, that's a guy that's converted from tackle to guard. And yet he does that so seamlessly where here's a guy who has played guard, and we didn't even move Christian off to like left guard. We've kept him over at right guard. And, you know, we're hearing he's not strong enough from the coaching staff. He needs to get more powerful. Like, I'm hopeful for the kid. I really am, but I can't rely on him now. I got to treat it almost like a bust pick if I'm Schneider. And this is part of the course correction thing I talk about. Prior with Schneider in the offensive line, he goes up to the line and says, let me do the bare minimum. So it's very easy this offseason to look at the right guard position and say, oh, all right, we'll get one more year of Bradford's development. And then we're going to we're going to count on Christian Haynes to have the light bulb go on. When in actuality, there should be a guy in there pushing as a third aspect of this, pushing some guy off the roster. Maybe it's Bradford, maybe it's Haynes at that point. But the guy shouldn't just be on the roster if he's going to play at like a league worst guard level, because you got high hopes at some point down the line that the light bulb's maybe going to come on. That's where we end up holding on to guys too long in that way. It's what I would call the Jermaine Ifedi approach. And it's the definition of sunk cost. Kubri's Abe has been underwhelming. Been underwhelming a good majority of his time here. Good chance he won't be 100% after coming back. I highly doubt he make our own line look better at all. Well, this is the part about the thing that I go to at Cool Breeze is that we don't know where really Abe is at. So I've heard from folks a little bit like yourself on this that'll say, you know, he's not going to give anything. He's done. His knee shot. You guys might be right on this, but there's no way to really know. When Abe's knee was good, and we know for a fact when Abe came back last year, you know, he was injured in the very first game of the season, Cool Breeze, you know, so he was not healthy last year. And we know that even in that first year that he was playing, that he played through that injury for a few weeks before they finally shut him down. But when you look at his performance through those first 10 games of that year, he was very good. I mean, he stood toe-to-toe with Hutchinson that one game and gave him the business. So yes, if he's not at 100%, if this is that it's just his knee is being held together by this little fray of ligament and he's not able to push off on it like he couldn't before, and what caused them to be drawn to put him onto surgery block, yeah, he's not going to help this line out at all at that point. You're right about that. But if he's back to the guy that he was those first 10 games for us, and being that he is a pure fit for this spread scheme and his mobility that he brings to the play, yeah, if he can play like that, that will definitely help and improve this offensive line. I just don't think we know. I don't know one way or the other on that. I mean, unless you're aware of a kind of something that we've heard from the background on this, that it's the surgery didn't help or didn't get him fully fixed, or that, I don't know. I hear a lot of people speaking about the certainty that he's not going to be this or not. And I just go, you can sell me on that. I'm with it, but just tell me how you know it to be the case when there's been so much kind of hidden from us in the situation that they haven't been open and honest with us exactly of what's happened. We don't even know what surgery, he had at this point. Ezel Hazard, if Grubb is smart, K9 should be getting jet sweeps, screen passes, stretch plays. Don't ever have him run into the offensive line hole. It's insanity. I agree. I like the fly sweep idea with him. I've seen him used in that way a couple times, SL, and he's been very good. Haley B, where are the people mad? Why aren't people mad about the Haynes pick? Number 1 or number 2 guard on everyone's board. Best fit for our scheme. Busts happen all the time, and he's still a rookie. This is nuts. B, when people are mad about Haynes pick. Yeah, I don't know on the. I mean, I can only speak on my perspective, Haley, with it, because there's always different perspectives when it comes to even Haynes on that from where they stand with it. My problem comes to a couple places, I guess, in that, you've got a guy drafted after him that's playing at a top 15 level in this sport that you passed on for this guy who was supposed to be pro ready, who you didn't have to move out of position, and you have a guy who's playing league worst guard ahead of him, and he can't unseat that guy. Busts do happen. I think that when it does point back to, again, John's approach to the offensive line, though, and his lack of sometimes commitment to this offensive line, that when you go, okay, you're not going to trade for guys, okay, you're not going to spend money on guys, and then you are going to draft these guys and draft them very infrequently, even high, and then you're going to miss on picks, or is your development off? I mean, that's the part that I wonder, was like, where's our development at on some of these guys if this is this way? I look at a guy like Evan Brown, for instance, last year, and I know it's a different coaching staff, but playing center and is a nightmare at center and just, goes out there, plays a guard for the Cardinals this year. He hasn't given up one pressure all year long. But I think people have a right to be disappointed about the Haynes pick. You pick a 3rd-round guard, you feel pretty strongly that guy should be able to start day 1 for you, at least hold his water a little bit, not be at a league worst rate if he's going to play out there, And it wouldn't make it the worst thing in the world if this was a miss, Maley, but this is the problem with them putting all of their eggs in the one basket. You went into this offseason and you said, all right, we're not going to give any significant money out. You gave a $3 million deal to Lakin. You gave a very small deal to George Fant. And so you really made the crown jewel of what you were going to do for this offensive line this offseason, Christian Haynes. That was your big old splash move. Unless we want to say that signing Connor Williams at the end of training camp after he just came off of an ACL was that move. And then that one fails and fails pretty majorly. And so I think this is where we come back to. It's some call for the job thing. For me, it's more of just calling for you to learn your lesson here, John. Make it a priority. Man, this is where we all come back around. Just make it a priority and it can get fixed. Don't make it the thing you bare minimum up to. And they've been bare minimum it for 10 years, 10 long years. It's going to take investment. It's going to take a little bit of pain of investment to make this better. And if John doesn't cross that road, this team isn't going anywhere fast. Ryan says, watching what Holmgren did with our Hawks, taking them from a mediocre to Super Bowl contenders in 4 to 5 years, taught me just how important coaching is. Then Pete and John come in and build a powerhouse. Indeed, coaching matters. Coaching absolutely matters. Cameron says, nah, on the CMC thing, we'll be dialed in for him. Let's go. We realistically don't see Abe making much of a difference. Hope he proves me wrong. Spaces, is there anyone currently on the offensive line that's worth keeping? Right now, Cross, maybe Lucas. I mean, I'm not bailing on Haynes yet. I just think I'm not counting on him. Thomas Roof, that'd be about it, though. We have to remember it takes time for a rookie head coach to get his scheme and philosophy. I have confidence he will, but it'll probably take next year or the year after. Yeah, I agree with that, Thomas. Got to be patient with the new coach. R. Malky. Hey, Brandon. Good stuff on the right tackle. I appreciate Jake for giving Geno props. It's almost like when you watch a Seahawks game, you realize how much the offensive line is hindering the quarterback. Go Hawks. I was not expecting Jake to say it last night. And again, I will give him a ton of props, too, for doing it because it's not easy to have that kind of shift of a take. Definitely in the nature of the things that I run into a lot are folks that will hold on to their take to their deathbed a little bit with it. But I think it speaks to the intelligence of Jake to recognize it, and especially when he admits a little bit, like, and it's understandable. You got a casual eye on a quarterback up in Seattle. It's not your team. You're not going to be watching him as closely. But the moment he started over this past couple of weeks, because I, 5-6 weeks ago, went in there with, a little bit of fire and kind of gave it to those guys on their takes on Geno. And, I was having none of it. And I'm not going to have any of it. You're not going to sit here and look me in the face and tell me Geno's playing at a 22nd level as a quarterback in this sport, like they were in uniformity when I walked in there. But to his credit, he's gone back with the points I've made and looked back at Geno and watched him closely and just got to see a game with his team playing that. And that's his takeaway walking away from it now. And the way that now that you pay attention to it and you really concentrate on it, and that's why I hammer it so much, is I think a lot of times people just aren't concentrating on it enough. They're concentrating on the QB and they're locking on Geno, but they're not really locking on this other connective part that absolutely has to do its job for Geno to do his. And every quarterback in the sport is beholden in that way. There is nobody really above that. Are there some guys who can do a little bit better within that environment? Maybe a little bit better. Sure. But you give them a failing unit all the way around. Can't run block, can't pass protect. They're a penalty machine all across the board. You're going to have probably a failing offense. Thanks, Malachi. And props to Jake, man. Haley says, I'd agree Haynes should be better, but most offensive lines don't do well until year 3. He was the consensus number 1 and number 2, depending on the blocking scheme guard in the draft. Yeah, it wasn't a bad pick. I mean, I'm not going back on and say it's a bad pick now in this moment. It's still very good value, and hopefully he can develop in time. But also, he was a guy to be drafted, Haley, as a guy that was supposed to be pro ready-made. 2 years of starting. So you look at Bradford, for instance, 2 years back, Haley, and you go, LSU, 13 starts, basically only started 1 season of play, very raw prospect, what you see from him on the tape. And Haynes, you had a guy that, 2 years of starting, I think he hadn't given up a pressure in 2 years, looked very technically sound, looked very ready to go. And so that's the other part of this that it's a bit of the difference of the type of prospects you're selecting and what you're hoping to get. And you were hoping a little bit more for that certainty and, getting him enable in there to slide in and play year 1. And, there are guys, I think Frazier out there with the Steelers right now. Haley, he's playing really well for them at center. Dominic Pooney within our own division is playing really well. Steve Avila last year that the Rams drafted, played really well for them right off the gate initially. I mean, there are guys that in that drafting range, when you pick them, that walk in and they usually can play well. If it's in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, that's a little more project-based. But if it's 1st, 2nd, 3rd round, I should have pretty relative confidence that those guys can walk in and kind of start from the jump, especially if they've had a rich amount of starting experience at the college level. Phoebe says, B, how can the NFL not look at the Legion of Boom and what the Seahawks fans and fan base do to the NFL revenue when they have a good team and they have support all over the world? But no, let's be biased. Well, I mean, it's a big market, and yeah, you're right about how it kind of captured the imagination at that time. I think the NFL doesn't look at it like we could necessarily replicate that again in the same way. The NFL also, when we want to come down to brass tacks, I think there are certain markets they want to get going in a way that, like the Los Angeles Rams, that's going to directly impact us then. It is what it is. SL Hazard, who's our O-line coach, great offensive lines usually have a badass old man coaching them. They do, SL. We got the guy, I can't remember his name right now off the top of my head, but the guy off UW's offensive line coach from last year. I mean, he produced, I think he produced 2 or 3 drafted guys out of last year's draft. So see what he can do as we go forward. I'd love to bring back Holmgren as the offensive coordinator. Cool Breeze. Haley B. Is Haynes, do you think, a testament to the drafting offensive tackles higher instead of guards later than kicking them inside? We need more strength to run the scheme. Do you get that more from converts? No. Atypically, if you're going to move a tackle into guard, you're going to lose a little bit of strength. And you're doing that, Haley, then to get a little bit more mobility for the guys that can pull in space, climb to the second level, that type of thing. So the strength then has to kind of come usually a little bit later. If you drop the guards, you're maybe getting more of the ready-made guy who can be strong already initially off the gate. But that's, of course, something that's an issue with, ironically speaking, Haley, that's something we've heard as a direct criticism from the coaching staff of Haynes, that he's missing the strength on that. I do think you got to be open to moving the tackles to guard if you're going to run a spread style system, and you're going to need these guys that can move in space. But that's also a little bit of a separate thing from who's the best guy to draft, because it gets probably very hard to then put your board together, Haley, when you have a pure guard like Haynes, and then you're trying to sort of, what's the word I'm trying to look like? Trying to project a little bit of where you think Pooney's going to be, because Pooney was fully a right tackle in college. So you're going, well, how is he going to look at guard? Does he have the leverage ability to get low? I think he will. There's also, I think, a little bit more imagination to be applied when you do look at those tackles in that way. And good on the Niners that they did that imagination and it's worked out. But you probably, as a general manager, want to more draft the guy who's at the position you're picking. You probably get a little bit less settled than picking a guy in that, third round place where that's the case of what you're seeing. Nick says Danny Stutzman would be sick with McDonald, the Oklahoma linebacker. He'd be fun, man. Smart kid. Smart football player. Plays hard. Scott Huff. That's who's the offensive line coach is. Thank you, guys. Bimi says, B, thoughts on Marshawn Lattimore trade? How can someone in the NFL for almost 6 years get worse every year since their rookie year? I might be wrong on the years. Let me see how he's done overall. Nice. So I can tell you what I kind of think in looking at just snap counts, games played, that type of thing over the last few years. And it's a worry that I have that this would be the thing that keeps me up at night as far as a general manager and giving money to guys, is that I think that there's a big part of these guys, Lattimore, former first round pick, then gets his contract with the Saints, that you ease up on the stick. You ease up on the training. You ease up on kind of how hard you go in the games, how hard you work out in the offseason to prep yourself. Everything gets kind of dialed down a little bit of intensity, and you get less of a player from it. Whereas when you get the guy first coming into the scene as a rookie as he was and hadn't earned that yet, that real big contract, hungry, doing everything he can. And he had 2 first really great years. But I would attest to it being maybe some of that. Otherwise, it's some injury that's robbed him a little bit of something. He's not a bad corner at this point, but kind of just a league average cornerback in what he brings. And so I never like to question guys' spirit of heart, but I do see a lot of the NFL with these guys that do get paid. It's, suddenly that next year they can only play about 12 games of the year. Performance is kind of middling. Talented guy, though. And what's funny about that is that they drafted his comp with Kool-Aid McKinstry. They literally got the guy who I thought matched up closest to Lattimore as a player coming out. So it didn't seem to scare off the Saints when going after the same type of player. Haley B, isn't that like saying people should have drafted Brady? You know where they're at until after you draft him? Got to follow your board? No, yeah. I think that the key on the Haynes thing to get caught up on here is not that we're looking in retrospect it's a bad pick, and that's where I got into Haley. It's the centerpiece problem. That's what we'll call it. And that the centerpiece problem has been an issue with the Seahawks going back now for 10 years. Maybe with the exception of the draft 2 years ago where you took Lucas and you took Cross, but even then you didn't spend any significant money on the offensive line. But comes down simply to this. You got the 3 ways to improve your offensive line. Your Seahawks only choose one of those methods on a yearly basis. And in doing that then, within that one method being draft, what they then do is they'll put one semi-high pick towards the position and they try to draft a couple of back ends to find some diamond in the rough. That's okay if you develop like a madman. If you've got Scarmecchia, the old Patriot offensive line coach, you can make it work. You got Howard Mudd, the old great Hall of Fame Colts offensive line coach, you can make it work. But you don't have that, you're not loading up enough to improve the unit on the whole. And so it's not as much about Haynes being the miss or not miss pick. It's that you put all of your eggs into the Christian Haynes basket. And now as the Christian Haynes prospect doesn't take flight, you're just kind of stuck there as general manager, sort of shrugging, going, well, that was our shot, man. That's all we had. That was our thing. That was our big move. That was our big swing. And that's, to me, the part where I think there's a lot of validity behind people getting mad at John on this, going, this process has got to stop. It's been 10 years of this. You got to stop with it. It's not working. You're churning out league worst offensive lines on like a yearly basis with this approach. Can you quit it, please? And so that it's more, I think getting caught up too much on Haynes is kind of getting lost in the sauce on that. Haynes was a fine pick. Haynes wasn't a reach. Haynes may turn out to be a good pick in the long term. But for the 2024 season, you said this has got to be the guy that'll get it fixed, and he wasn't ready to get it fixed, and you had no other real backup plan there to try to deal with anything. And, you also misaligned on your outlook of Bradford because you said, well, we think, and I had hopes that Bradford would take a step forward, but I also don't have the data and information that they do behind closed doors about this guy on the level of confidence you can have that he would take that step. And it's hard for me to think that they have some confidence that he was going to take this big step, and he's just been completely like, well, he just didn't do it this year. We thought he was, and then he just didn't. So maybe instead of Haynes, what you should have done is said, oh, well, we realized last year Bradford is really rough. He is going to take a long time, and he might not develop to that state. So let's go find some more legitimacy at the right guard position rather than just rocking with Haynes or the great fluctuator known as Bradford. Narc Diary says, thanks for still doing a show. Defense looked much better. Ernest is great. Yeah, Jones has looked really good. Really, 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 really good. And yeah, Haley, he was good in college. I don't want to do a retrospect thing where we're looking at him saying he was really good in college, and the tape was really good. It's that thing that you thought you were getting a technician, you were getting a guy that you thought would be more further along, kind of like you were thinking you're getting the inverse of a Bradford a bit. And instead you might have gotten another rough prospect that's going to take some while to develop to get to where he may go. But Haynes has still got the legitimate upside there. I don't want to cast him as that I'm looking to throw him by the wayside. I just want to see us really reinforce and double down on this thing instead of taking it to that bare minimum point. And so Hazard says, I'm not willing to quit on rookies and young players when it could be the coaches failing to develop them. Very, very true. Very true. Haley, my biggest issue with the line thinking is that Haynes' concerns while here are the opposite of the concerns when he was in college. Strength was his biggest plus, which is why it's weird. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, a little bit. I mean, he was a little bit of a catcher on the run blocking stuff on the tape for me, Haley. He was a little bit of a catch shielder. What I mean by that is it's, I'm coming off my stance. I'm coming into you. That's attack. There's a lot of times with him where on an offensive run blocking play, he's catching and then he's arching his body this way because the run play is going off of his backside here. So it's a lot of him then shielding this way, or he'll take penetration into the backfield and then guide the guy out the backfield away from his running back, because he's trying to take advantage of the one gapping of the hard basically shoot that the defensive tackle is taking. And so there's a little bit of almost redirecting at times a bit on his tape, but as a pass protector, you're absolutely right. The strength and power was there with him on those where, he could hunker in, he could anchor down. Again, the talent's legitimate with him. It just looks like it might be a while for him to get there with it, especially considering he can't unseat a guy like Bradford, who is playing like a league worst guard. It's not merely like, well, he's got a league average guy in there who's at least kind of just doing at least there, and he's just kind of a bit below that. It's like, well, he's way below this guy who's at a league worst state. That's where it's head scratching, I think, a bit. But there's hope. There's hope a long time. Ryan says we spend $19 million on our offensive line, and the Chiefs spend $60 million on their offensive line. It's where it ain't really. It may seem like there are complicated things about football that are hard to understand and hard to get right and hard, but when it comes to the offensive line, this isn't hard. If you're not going to maximize your resources to the line, you're not going to have a good offensive line. That's just the reality here. There's no such thing as going with, Salvation Army offensive line and expecting that you're going to get prime returns on that. It ain't happening. And the Chiefs have made a point of emphasis. They have made the offensive line a point of priority for the last couple of years to make sure it's in the right state of mind. They just made Creed Humphrey the highest paid center in the league, but a couple months ago. They have no issue in understanding that this is what you have to do, especially for Mahomes. And yeah, we spend a paltry amount in comparison. And that's one of the easy places you can see where, why would we be willing to spend a little more on our line? Yeah, there you go. Bingo. Draft a little bit more. Bingo. Draft a little bit more higher. Bingo. Does that mean you got to not draft as much other stuff and that other stuff gets sacrificed for it? Well, yeah, sure. But have you maybe overkilled some of these other draft positions and how much you picked on them and how much you selected to them and how much you dedicated to them? Yeah, maybe. Team Money says we need to make noise that Schneider needs to draft. Sorry, Team Money. Thank God. Oh man, Mr. We need to make noise that Schneider needs to draft starting offensive lineman, or we want him fired and do a protest to not show up for 2 games if we don't. It'd be hard to get that protest together, but I'm with you, Team Money. If you can get it worked up and we can get it coordinated, I'm on board with it. And I will be doing my part here, Team Money, throughout this offseason to bang this drum just about every time I go live. Please go get some offensive linemen. I might just start it as a meme every time I start out my show. Just, please, John, get an offensive line, and on to the news of the day. Nick says, I'm fine with Murphy. Would have preferred the route of trading down to get a 2nd-round pick. Issue is Haynes being unplayable, and outside of Knight and Barner, every other pick is a miss. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, Sato, Lamea, and Jarrell will look at. I think those were kind of long-term selections as you made them. Nehemiah Pritchett, we'll see with him as well, but it could play out. It's hard, Nick, to evaluate a draft half a year into the draft experience for rookies. I think we're a little early on it. We got to give a little more time. Haley, rookie contract left tackle, rookie contract right tackle, right guard. You didn't expect to fall off a cliff. Left guard that currently is like 26th rated in the league. Thomas says, I believe John Schneider was trying to copy Baltimore's model for picks. The first 3 picks was in either BPA, O-line, and D-line, regardless if they need or not. That sounds right. Kevin says, B, what's going to be our record? I'm still in for 11-6. Wow, you've got more confidence than I do at this point, Kevin. I think you find your way to 8 wins this year. I'm with Space. I think you end up about 8 and 9 at this point. SL, I saw Mina Kimes saying this is the worst line to have on third down since 1980. At a certain point, you got to stop blaming the players and look at who's coaching them. I mean, it's certainly something worth considering on the coaching aspect, SNL. But it's also, I think this comes down to the investment in the offensive line, and a lot of it comes out of that. You know, you're in these third and longs because the line is that bad. I mean, I more pinpointed to that. And then you go, why is the line bad? Well, lack of resources invested into it. You're putting that bare minimum into this offensive line and have been doing so for 10 years. So its performance is not really that surprising at that point. But yes, it's you're correct in that stat, SNL. It's since 1980, we are 3rd and 9 is what we average as an offense. And that's the longest average for an offense on third down since 1980. That's what we call ouch. Is Olu still on the practice squad? I think he's on the active squad. Ryan says maybe Grubbs plays red zone play calling is killing Geno. It's very possible. I'm not impressed with his red zone play calling. He gets very boring and very simplistic down by the red zone. Thomas is with me. He says the players need to be blamed. I'm not blaming a head coach who has 1 year under his players. We all know that Murphy, Barner, and Knight have something. JS needs to show us more improvement in free agency in the draft. Let's go, Thomas. I'm with you. TJ says, oh, who's our emergency tight end? Hey, he's got a hell of a pair of hands on him, I'm telling you. Nick, for Olu to not come in for Connor Williams is probably more of a reflection on Olu. They can't have much faith in him. The terrible snaps by Williams would be benched on any other team. Yeah, I think that signing Connor Williams was definitely not boding well for the future of Oluwatimi and their outlook of him as a possibility, I don't think. Cameron Robinson says, what's up, B? Could you possibly do a video of a mini all-22 on Bradford, Williams, Jarrell, Stone, and then CC for a left side, right side comp? I'll try, Cameron. I will. I got to be honest, I'm stretched super thin this year right now as much as ever. And those videos are really hard to put together because they take a long period of time to put together. And so I think I'm up to doing like 9 shows right now a week on the live streams. And so it's just, it's been a lot trying to get thumbnails and all that stuff prepped. I'm doing way more shows we've ever done. So I'm trying to get to do some of the upload work. It's just that stuff is already so time consuming. I could start a video. It's going to take me 4 weeks to get one done. Definitely. I'm thinking if I can't get to them right now, Cameron, I'll be doing kind of I think my idea is to do more of an off-season kind of retrospective on each player for video by video on each of them at that point. But if I can kind of try to do something, I will. It's just the timing on this stuff sometimes is just tough. The season's already flying by. But it's a great suggestion. And I would like to feature definitely I do have some clips put together for the Bradford and the Jarrell one, Cameron. I did do one on that one. We did look at like 15 of his snaps from the Falcons game he started. That's over on my clips channel, Cameron. But definitely for Williams, I'll get one done for him, and Bradford will have to get drunk to put that video together. That'll be some brutal tape to watch. Thomas says, how many great offensive line coaches would succeed with less money in the O-line position? It's not just evaluating talent, but it's also spending money. John Schneider and the Hawks are cheap. Good point. Haley B, I'm bummed about Haynes, to be clear, but I don't know how you scout his strength being too low. It wasn't on the tape. 25 reps on the bench. Similar broad jump to Pooney, who didn't bench. 1.7 10-yard split. Well, I again, nuance on this, Haley. It's the difference on feeling his power in the run game versus in pass protection. I felt it a little bit more in pass protection and his ability to anchor down in that way, sort of when he's going backwards and anchoring. It's better than when he's going forward and trying to drive block. So when it came to the strength issues that I saw on his tape, from my perspective on it, I saw it on the going up in front of the guy and drive blocking the guy off the line. And that atypically he was doing a lot of what I would call kind of finesse technique, shield blocking, routing, these kind of things that you would do for a guy when he doesn't have the power, so he's getting over the power by, doing that routing. And just because you have the 25 reps on the bench doesn't mean you have necessarily then functional power on the actual football field. And if we look back at, if you even look back at Haley, when we did the video where I went back and looked at remember the off season, we had a live stream show where I went back and looked specifically back at Haynes. It was for the second viewing of Haynes after the draft, where you get to do more of a deep dive in on Haynes. And so if you go and look up the video I did at that time, this is prior to the season starting, Haley. So this isn't after we've gotten this information. Prior to the season starting, I go back and look at the second look of him. You can find the video if you look it up from this off season in the summer when we were looking at him, where I said on the tape, I go, and just double checking and looking back at this tape again with him as a guard there in college and run blocking and what I'm seeing on the tape, there is some missing strength. So you might not have seen it yourself. I did bring it up in that video this offseason before we've now heard from the coaches during this season that they're seeing a lack of strength from him. So I did see it. I did mention it. And that was prior to any of it coming down to that was before he had played a single snap in preseason, because you do see it on the tape. It's just, it's not quite there. They're in pass protection, but then it's wholly different when you watch him as a run blocker. He's not getting into guys and causing a lot of drive. Instead, it's a lot of that sort of shield blocking. Where's my running back? He's here to my right shoulder. I'll shield this way away from it and keep him then at my back. Haley's getting stuck on this one. I think Haley, do please. Because I think that's why I want to reference the offseason and that video that I made on this, because I think that's then not me being Johnny come lately on, hey, here's him recently playing like this, and let me sort of cherry pick a spot that no one saw coming in the draft. Definitely mentioned, I believe it was in a June or early July video that I did on Haynes on a live stream. And I went through, Haley, on that video, I think we went through about 25 snaps or something like that of Christian Haynes Connecticut snaps. And what you'll see me noting on that video multiple times over is a lack of strength, especially in the run game. So it was there. I'm not doing this in retrospect. I said it at the time. Still was a really good prospect. So it doesn't make him not a good prospect. It does mean, though, that was a part of his game that showed up in college that is also showing up here. BB, Haynes is almost 25. If his strength isn't there already, it really worries me. Should I be worried about that because strength is coming down towards that age? I mean, I don't know if it's coming down. I don't know. There's time for guys to get stronger. And he's gotten, even at 25, you've not gotten to your old man strength point of things. So I don't think that it's necessarily the biggest deal. The other thing is that what it is this. There was a hope when we drafted him that he could be moved to left guard. He can't be moved to left guard because you're not going to want to consistently in the running game have him go at the point of attack and be blowing off even a 3-tech off the line of scrimmage, because he's just not ever really going to have that pure power in him to do it. So he is, yes, going to end up being as just a traditional right guard in the way that he is a pure right guard. Right guards tend to have the benefit of the double team blocks because most offenses are going to run to the right side. That's where the power side is going to be. So, where you're going to the strength of the offensive line unit, you're going to have your double team on your nose tackle, let's say, between the center and the right guard. And so he's oftentimes going to get a lot of help when he is doing the run blocking side of it. But if you're going to ask him to go take on a nose tackle one-on-one and be able to handle that guy, that's not really going to be a part of his game. Another part of this is that he is a pure fit for this system, and his mobility and getting out in space and his movement in space and targeting guys at the second level. It's another part of this equation that he brings. And that part, he's a really pure fit. And also understanding within this offense, because it is more of that spread style system, it's less about necessarily needing the guys that can just blow those guys off the ball mano-a-mano, no problem. So it's a complicated kind of situation in regards to this guard situation, but the power part is the power part with him. It is what it is with it. It's not the worst of things. You can work around it, especially with this kind of scheme, but it is something that's there. Thomas says, Brando, what Seattle rank in money spent in O-line compared to other teams? I don't even know how to look that one up, to be honest with you. See if I can find something here. Let's see what Sports Track can help us out with this. There we go. Here we go. Okay, so we've got KC up at $60 million as your number one team. That's the most amount of allocated money for the offensive line. Atlanta, Carolina with the Robert Hunt making more than $20 million a year. Houston, Indianapolis, by the way, the highest rated PFF offensive line, both in pass protection and run blocking. Cleveland, all these teams, by the way, you're seeing at the top have put significant resources into their offensive line. They didn't get here by just sort of player development. You had to put a significant amount of resources to get the line good. So we keep going down the old list here. Where's Seattle, guys? Where's Seattle at? Not 11, not 12, not 13. Oh my God, where are they? We got to go so low. Keep going. Still not there. Oh, geez. Jacksonville, Giants 23, Jets 24. Where are they? Still not there. 25, 26. Still not there. 27, 28. We're not even spent as much as the Cardinals. And there we are. Finally. Finally right there. We're spending the 29th most amount of money on our offensive linemen. Yeah, why do they suck? Why aren't we good? Why it is a catastrophe every effing week? There you go. There you go. There you go. T-Money, if Gino does not even the score with the division, does not even the score of a division, should McDonald start Sam Howell and see? Nope, don't start Sam Howell. That's not going to work. Nope. Sam's not going to do better behind this line. Brandon the Hawks says, Brandon, could you probably blast through the comments faster if you answer every question with "we need an offensive line"? It's true. That's probably true. B, why did the defense start to look like the Ravens last game? Are players starting to get it? Yeah, probably. I think McDonald half season into this is feeling more comfortable starting to run out some of these more complicated concepts. I do have some deep silences, man. Chris says, B, if you were to sign a free agent next offseason for the offensive interior offensive line, who would you consider? I'm looking at the names right now. That's why I'm being quiet. I'm trying to take a look at these. On the surface, the two guys that I would take a look at right off the rip would be Tevin Jenkins with Chicago. Aaron Banks with the San Francisco 49ers. Robert Jones, the Miami Dolphins guard. Those would be three guys that I would take a look at. Perhaps Brady Christensen with the Carolina Panthers. Maybe Liam Eichenberg. Another college tackle guard transfer there. There's a couple guys. There's not any real stars at the guard position, I'd say. Let's see if there's a center. So Ryan Kelly's due to be a UDFA from the Colts. He's certainly a guy that you would take a look at. He's going to cost a lot of money, 31 years old. Maybe a guy worth taking a look at. Center position looks like it's going to be a little bit rough to find much there. We might have to go to the draft for that. But something to consider as well with this on that question is that we might get some releases that add to the mix on this and sort of change the structure of this a little bit. Haley says, I don't know if it's true. I don't know if I buy if they can't get playing time angle either, by the way. Look at Job playing great despite not getting time with Eagles and being a late addition to our practice squad. Yeah, I mean, it's the thing is, though, that the Eagles didn't have, like, if you put it in comparison, Haley to Bradford, the Eagles didn't have league worst play really at the corner position, not allowing him an opportunity to get out there. You know, they were holding up relatively well until like the end of last year, where their older guys started to kind of fall off at the end of last year. But it wouldn't be as much for most prospects. If you're a prospect that's supposed to be ready-made to be a pro, if you're an older prospect coming in like Haynes is, there is a little bit of an expectation then that you're ready to go, you know, when you walk in. And that's why every prospect's got to be viewed individually on that front. If I get a guy that's 21 years old, Haley, like JPJ was coming out of Oregon, my outlook for his timeline of development needs to be different of a guy like Christian Haynes, who's almost 25 years old. But again, it's not a death knell if he doesn't play right off the bat, you know. There's still plenty of time here for him to realize to become a solid pro. Keon Lund, thank you for another $2 donation, Keon. I'm disappointed for Kenneth Walker III. Imagine if we had blocking. I think Kenneth Walker, Geno Smith, and DK Metcalf are three players that are the most highly held back by this offensive line, and to a major degree from them being able to be their best selves. And I share your frustration with it. I think you're not getting the most out of Kenneth Walker by a large measure because of how bad this offensive line is. And it's a sad thing because we're not getting to see a really great player who can do so many dynamic things. And hopefully at some point he gets that. Keon. But it's hard to play the position when, you know, you're not getting any holes open up, when there's early penetration, when the defense seems to know where the play is going prior to the snap. It's being telegraphed so badly. So I share your frustration. It sucks. He's a great player. CJ Kurzman, thank you for the $5 donation. How is Laviska not getting more run as a Swiss Army knife in this offense? I'd understand if it wasn't working, but we haven't even tried. Kind of echoes of the last few seasons, CJ, right? I mean, we never would run fly sweeps, but every time we'd run a fly sweep, it would get you 8 yards. And then you'd proceed to run it once a game and then never run it again. Why? I don't know. Why would that be your approach? Why wouldn't you, stay with it if it was working? Why wouldn't you at least try it, to your point on this? You gave $1 million to Laviska Shenault, guaranteed $1 million contract. Half to 3/4 of the kickoffs that go back are not even going to go to where he can receive it back there and do anything with it on the kickoffs. So what are we doing the $1 million for? He's not a punt returner. Why did we give him even $1 million guaranteed contract if there's no real plan of attack here, especially for a guy who has a skill set, like you say, that is wholly unique to any other receiver on this roster, especially for an offense that finds its place in games with tough sledding? I don't get it either, CJ. I've been calling for it for weeks. There's the one game you gave him the one touch, I think, in the Detroit Lions game where you threw him a little tunnel screen there and he took it for 20 yards. And then Grubbs proceeded to never go back to him again. Or here and there, but when he has gone to him, he's been pretty successful. He's got a drop, I think, at one point where they try to actually throw to him, but use him like the Swiss Army guy, Give him a couple fly sweeps a game. if just to keep the off defense honest. Cameron says, I hear you, B. Sounds good. Thank you. Like and sub, people. Thank you, Cameron, for reminding me that. Please hit that like button, folks, if you could for me. Helps this channel out. Thomas says, but wouldn't Haynes' athleticism be more important, especially in the run game? They need to get to the second level or secondary. Yeah, that's why I say it's not the lack of strength is not a death knell for him on that. Lack of maybe as much functional power as you might like. And atypically, those right guards, that's what you're getting is a lot of power. But this is where the evolution of the sport's going for more mobile guys and the more of the onus being on guys that can move in space. AI, thanks for getting the spam in there. Thomas's problem is how long is this rebuild or reload? Honestly, to be where Detroit is, they need at least one good free agency and a great draft. Problem for next year's draft isn't as good as this year for O-line. You can utilize trades. You can utilize free agency. It doesn't just have to be by the draft. And that's been the way we've gone in recent years, is that we've only taken the draft as the pathway we take. So I'd offer that there's other ways to take. I think that the draft, I get that the narrative right now that I'm hearing hammered a bit is that the draft is not going to be good this upcoming year. Let's wait until we arrive at that stage till we've done the full evaluation through the offseason. These kind of narratives will tend to come up at times of year like this. And then you get to the draft and then suddenly it starts to shake around to, well, it's actually really more like kind of an average draft. Or what they were really meaning was it was that there's a lack of blue chip players in this draft. So let's see. Let's see on that. I'm as hesitant to buy into that narrative that this is going to be as weak a draft as people are kind of trying to sell. SL Hazard, I'm not a pull the plug kind of guy, but I wouldn't mind seeing what we have in Hal. If he's a starter, better extend him this offseason than break the bank next year when his contract's up. Yeah, I can't get on board and doing the Hal SL. I mean, he took 50 sacks and threw 21 interceptions with the 15th best pass protection unit and the 9th best run blocking unit. You give him something at a league worst state on the other end of that, and it's going to be worse as a result. You know, and he's not 5 years removed from that experience. He's 23, 1 year removed from that performance with that offense. I think we know what we got in Hal right now at the moment. I think he's your backup your next 2 years, and next year he'll get a chance to compete, I think, but you're not for the better by putting him out there. It's not for the better of this team this year by putting him out there. I mentioned too on this SL, and I've yet to see anybody in my chat post this. I've asked, is there anyone that was on the berm in training camp like myself was on the berm who's calling for Sam Howell right now? Is there anybody that was in person watching him sling the rock versus Geno slinging the rock in practice who's saying, yeah, Sam's better. Sam would be a better option to go that? Because I've mentioned it, I've called for it a couple times in my chat. No one said in my chat that was there in person. So I think we all kind of uniformly were seeing the same thing, which is that there was a big wide difference of ability between Sam Howell and Geno Smith. It wasn't like they were neck and neck. It was like far apart. Haley B, the Job comparison was more for LeMay. Oh, okay. I don't know why I have lots of hope for him. I think you should have hope for him. He's making the transition tackle to guard. He's never played really guard before out there at Utah. So I'm open with him being good down long term too. I like LeMay. LeMay. Let me say it right. Joe, I think our staying quiet at the trade deadline could be a positive. I don't know. I think McDonald and Schneider are saying calm. We're seeing signs we want. Let's stay the course. Are they right? Yeah, I think it's a good. I don't think you had seen anything from your level of play, Joe, that would have swung you hard one way or the other. Either swung you to be a buyer or swing you to be a seller. I think what it was telling you this year is let this play out. You know DK and Abraham are coming back. Uchenna maybe down the line too in addition to that. Let's see how that plays out over the course of the rest of this half of the season. And then if there's ultimately major determinations to be made, major changes to be made, do it in the offseason at that point. And then go hard then. Pittsburgh does have a good offensive line, Haley. They do for sure. They put an insane amount of assets, not insane, but a lot of draft capital in their offensive line through the draft, though. They didn't just like barely tap it. They slammed that button. Go says strength peaks around 30. Explosiveness peaks earlier. There we go. Weedy Fuzzball, do you think Geno can make the playoffs the last 8 games? Yeah, I know Geno can hold up his end of the bargain. It's really, can the offensive line quit being league worst? The line could pull theirself up by their bootstraps to get even around like high 20s to around middle of the road state through the rest of the year. The offense will be significantly more improved. And if the defense can continue to build on the performance, what they did with the Rams last week, and start to bring out some more of the measure of what we expected to get from McDonald, that's also a big helpful hand on that side of it. So sure, yeah, absolutely he can. Thomas, Kevin Zeitler, that's who's playing for Detroit. Seattle needs to look to sign. I did look at Kevin, 34, 35 years old, Thomas. So maybe getting up into that place where I want to, again, avoiding a little bit of where we've gone down the recent road here, is grabbing those guys that we're hoping last legs, 1-year deal. And Zeiler's been a good player, and he's a good player this year. Not denying that. But it would be a little bit of what you've done kind of recently for the position, I think. And you do wonder about his age at that point, and how well he'll fit to the mobile-based scheme we're going to want to run, if that is the one we're going to run. I don't think Holani's got a season-ending injury, Haley. I could be wrong on that, but I don't think he's on the IR for full year. I don't believe so. Cameron, is there a new regime reboot first season comp to Coach Pete's first season? Maybe. I think it's kind of hard to say right now, Cameron, what their approach is going to be quite this offseason. I think a lot of it's going to be based upon letting this whole year play out and see where it really all goes before making any kind of final determinations. Is our new regime reboot first season comp to? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like Carroll's first season a little bit. You're just assessing. Aaron Gray says, good thing B does these therapy sessions where we probably lose our mind. Thomas says, I saw Hal at August semi game before preseason games, and I'm more for Geno. Hal could be good if they develop him, but not with this O-line and lack of run game. There we go. I see it the same way. And Misfit, I do think that Barner's got some real potential long-term as your starting tight end. Thomas's problem is that Geno has been pressured 60% of the time. Eventually, he could get injured. He could. You've been able to dodge some bullets and that you haven't gotten him injured to this point. And I'm worried about that. It's a real possibility getting smacked and banged around this much. So you got White better than Bobo, Misfit? No, maybe so. Thomas' problem is that most of the top guards aren't available. Maybe Teller, Nelson from the Colts, Martin from Dallas. And Martin's another guy who will be a free agent. Another guy kind of really up there in age, though who's been a very good player. And you're right. Yeah, the guards, it's not a real deep class, but can you make a trade? Can you find a team? And this is where I come down to where you may have the reality being, okay, you don't have a free agent to sign. Okay, you have to go make a trade. Okay, you have to go make a trade and give up real prime real estate to do so. But maybe your hand is forced to do that considering your lack of attention you've given the position now for many, many years. And I don't think that there's anybody in the fan base that if they overpaid for a quality guard would be pissing or moaning about that. I think we would all applaud it. Haley says Bradford was okay last season, not great, but good in the run game. This season he looks terrible, like completely lost. Like Bradford's PFF was about 60 last season. It's down to 50 this season. He was a little bit better last year. He wasn't being trotted out there as kind of the full starter too. So he was getting a little bit of the fits and starts in there for how they, worked him in a bit. But that's that thing that I find odd too, Haley, where he's not getting better. He's not improving. You're getting this regression that is not what you were expecting with the more play time you were going to give him. That's what you thought he needed. And that would make him start to get better as a player. So it runs counter to the reason and understanding and why. I don't know why it's kind of gone that way, but There's no denying it has gone that way. What's up, Brian? How you doing, man? Checking in after a fun evening on the San Antonio Riverwalk. Awesome place. That sounds like a cool place. I bet it's an awesome city. Check out. Brian says, so glad Sandy prevailed and DK is still a Hawk. Me too, man. No DK getting moved to the trade deadline. None of us expected that. I think he is going to be on that contract extension this offseason, and that'll make us all the happier when that happens. Keon Lund, thank you for another $2 donation. Just for fun, Russ or Gino right now? Who you picking? Gino. Gino's the better quarterback. So Russ is having a bit of a revitalization, and I hope he continues to have that revitalization. I hope Russ goes to the Super Bowl with the Steelers. But Russ has got to be run in a very certain specific kind of offense with certain specific kind of parameters around him to have success. As we're seeing with Gino right now, he can have success even when things are going wrong around him. And that's a real keynote difference between these two guys. So, it's really great to see what Russ is doing. But Arthur Smith, great offensive line, low volume passer, great defense on the other side. This is the formula that will put Russ in that position to succeed. Gino's not being given that same formula right now, Keon. So I will take Gino all day long. Thank you, man, for all of your donations and support today. Appreciate you for that. Thomas says, I'd be okay if they got Quentin Nelson or Teller. The O-line needs nastiness or physicality. That's the thing. I'm with it. You go to the Colts, and the Colts have put a lot of investment in offensive line, and maybe they want to do some other things in different places and change up some of what they're doing. Maybe you can come in there and grab one, or I think you just got to go to one of these teams and kind of blow them away with an offer. Give them a Godfather offer. Make them an offer they can't refuse. Let's do that. Why not? Especially if you don't like the talent in this. If this draft is really as bad as everyone's saying, well, then, certainly put some packages together and get that guy that way. I don't think there would be anybody in the Seahawks fan base that would be mad at that in the least. Thomas says, shoot, I'm happy they didn't trade Brandon Scherf from Jacksonville. Right now, they need to develop and wait till the end of the season to start scouting for the right player. I'm with it. B&B, it's Hawks Nest, the loved one, and B. Nelson, he's the villain. I don't think he's the villain, but I see him getting the most hate on Seahawks Twitter. Well, it's Twitter's a brutal place, man. They can be unmerciful out there, and he's getting more active than me on Twitter too. If I was more active on Twitter, I'd probably be getting banged around too out over there on that. If I did, I stay off there a little bit more. So for that very reason, for the most part, Chris, yeah, Russell would get killed in this offense. He would not be able to make this work here. This would be bad. Space, did you notice all the throwback jerseys in the crowd? I didn't. I missed it, man. Missing. Mrs. Bay, we can use a tight end to block or DK to block. Free up another aerial threat in white. Possible, man. He's definitely, he's my underrated hero of the week this week, Misfit, and a guy that if you, much like we saw from Bobo last year, where you just force the team by making plays, playing and play out, while you have an impact on special teams. That's how you force coaching staffs to keep you on the active roster and force yourself into finding a role on the football team. You get that kind of spirit brought into play, and I think you're kind of feeling that from White a little bit. It's good to see. AI says, Russ threw everyone under the bus, and his max deals make roster building far more difficult. Brady was never top 5 in pay. He always left some on the plate for better teammates. True. True. Very, very true. All right, guys, we're going to put a wrap up on this one here. I know it's a quick one here today, but I'm actually going to go over and be run over onto my Twitch channel, which is the Seahawks Nest on Twitch. You can click down the link section below, just a direct link to that channel. I'm going to be over there in about 20 minutes doing a little bit of playing. I'm taking this bye week a little bit light as well, along with you guys on it, kind of catching the breath. But if you guys want to continue some of this discussion over there, you can feel free to join me out over there, as I will be streaming on that side of it over there on my Twitch channel here in about 25 minutes or so. I'll be over there. That's the Seahawks Nest over there on Twitch. If you got any final questions, go ahead and get them on in here on this one. We'll be back with tomorrow in the B&B show, of course, 12 o'clock over on the side here. So we'll be bouncing back with that. And then we're going to be doing the call-in show tomorrow. I haven't got it posted yet. I'll get it posted tonight, but a call-in show for members of the channel. So 5 o'clock tomorrow, if you want to call on in, please do. I'll have the link sent out to you guys on the community post if you are a member of the channel. Last couple questions. We got to go. See what we got. I do think you're right, Misfit. I think that there's a difference in White and Bobo and how fast they do run. And that's part of what gives White a little bit, maybe more of an opportunity right now with him coming in last week, is I think Bobo's been a bit restricted at times. These last couple games where you're looking for him to maybe step up by his inability to kind of create that separation on the outside, filling in for DK. I think it's very true. It's very, very true. Well, I thank you guys. Sorry, SL. We got. I was on him earlier this season about the fumbles, but I promise I won't ever utter another bad word about DK. You can utter bad words about it, SL, and I know that there's oftentimes I get opinionated and forceful in my wanting to try to sell people on the thought process of where I'm at. But as I always say with this too, SL, I'll get defensive. I'll get blustery. I'll get, into my bag and that stuff, but it's always welcome differences of opinions here. We are never looking for this place to be an echo chamber. I will try to always sell you on my perspective. I will try to always bring you to the side of things of where I'm at, maybe on particular deals, but I love the fact that this community has its different outlooks on what it will take for this team to get to a winning state. Nobody's got some, monopoly on what it will take for this team to get there. I think that we got to get as much diversified thoughts on this to have every thought that we might have on this challenge, to have every position we might look at be kind of picked at to see where if it's really is the truth. And that's the same with DK. And whether it's DK or whether it's Gino or the offensive line, these things are never simplistic. They're always complicated. There's always a little bit of gray there where you can find truth, I think, on both ends of the matter there. But you always have a right to criticize on that. And the fumbles with DK have been something that they've come along enough that's worthy of being fumbled. The penalties are worthy of being criticized. It does come down to sort of the bottom line of, does this negative this player has on that side of it overrule the positive that he brings on the other end of it? In the case of a Gino, in the case of a DK, I always come back and say, yeah, their positive wildly overrules whatever negative that you do have on that other side of it. And, I'll say this with the Gino discussion to kind of finish this off. And this will be my last thought on this, and I just want to finish it with us because I haven't really tried to talk too much about Gino today because I think there's been a bit overkill on that. Something that goes on with the Gino discussion is what I like to call the disingenuous nature of it. And, is he a franchise quarterback? Is he this or that? Is it the arbitrary ways they want to reference into him? Geno Smith has been the 17th highest paid quarterback in the NFL the past 2 years. He's made about, on average, 6.5% of the salary cap over the last 2 seasons. And that was after he signed the deal of the comeback player of the year. That was as a younger player. When we have the conversation about Gino going forward, the potentiality of signing him to a deal, I see videos coming up where people present in their videos, is Gino worth 20% of the salary cap? This is what I would call a disingenuous view of the situation. And also a little bit of a representation of the fact that you don't trust your own belief on that, and that you've got to inflate and falsely inflate the numbers to make it fit into your narrative. The conversation about Gino is, and should be, until it's been changed from what it's been, that if you can get him back on to being around a contract that has him as the 17th highest paid quarterback, if he comes back onto a contract that instead of being up around 20%, is actually more about 6.5% on average through the first 2 years of the deal, is that a good contract to sign? Is he worth the money in that case? Is drafting a guy instead a better way to go? Is that good money to spend? Disingenuousness, straw manning, not appropriately giving what's really being said about the give and take for where it is on the table. So let's stop mis-selling it on it. If you don't believe in Gino, don't believe in Gino, but sell it right. Sell the opposition correctly. I can sell the opposition who doesn't want Gino here. Too old. Just not the guy. Don't like his body language. Don't think he's a leader. don't want to spend too much money on him, which is where we get to this point on a little bit, where they start thinking it's got to be 50 million. It's got to be he's going to want 50 this and 45. Where's the proof of that? Certainly not his last contract. So there'll be another discussion for another time. But one that I just would like to see as we try to have this honest discussion between two parties is that each side puts and presents to get what the other side's really trying to say and what the reality is of what we would be looking at if we put him onto a contract extension. That's all I ask on that. I thank you guys for watching today. If you guys could for me, please slam, bam, wham, that like button for me. This helps me out. I know it's a thing I ask you every single time, and I'm sorry to do that, but it does indeed help me out considerably. It helps me show up on other people looking for YouTube channels, from Hawk fans that are looking for YouTube channels. When you hit that button and you hit it en masse, that's what it shows. So I really appreciate it when you guys do that. We're on the road to 20,000. You can help me get there today, right now. One more thank you here to the sponsor of the show. That's Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy sponsoring us for almost over 2 years now. Use my code NEST or click the link in the bottom of the description section below, and they will match you 2 for 1. $100, $50 back in your pocket, freebie. $200, $100 back in your pocket, freebie. You want to go up to all the way $2,000, they'll put $1,000 back in your pocket, matching you note for note. So free money back in your pocket, and you support the show at the same time, and then you can go out there and even go win yourself some money, go head-to-head with other people, still weekly fantasy. They've got the pick 'em picks. You go over-under on yards, touchdowns. You got a certain set, 4 or 5 guys you know are going to score touchdowns that week. Lock them in. Go make yourself some money. Want to thank them for sponsoring the show. Use that code today, NEST. We will be back tomorrow with the B&B show at 12 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. But until that time, please, my fellow Seahawks faithful, even though we have lost 5 of 6, even though we do find ourselves at the bottom of this division, we don't give up in Seattle. We don't go into tank mode. If we've got a fighting chance, if there is any room left for us to throw that punch, we are swinging. And even if we are swinging wildly, we're swinging with the full force of all we got. So no giving up, no selling on this year yet. We ain't out until the fat lady sings, and I ain't heard her yet. So keep the faith, my fellow Seahawks fans, and please don't you ever, ever forget. Go Hawks.